Amici, welcome back to our podcast, where we dive into the fascinating world of cultures and countries. I'm Mira, and I'm thrilled to be here with my co-host. We're powered by the magic of Jet Off, where creativity and curiosity come together to bring you the best content.
Hey there, friends. I'm Leo, and I'm to be back with Mira. We've got a fantastic episode lined up for you today, and I'm sure you're all eager to dive in.
So, let's get started. Before we begin our main topic, I have to share a funny story with you all. Between our last podcast and this one, I had the most epic coffee spill of my life. I was rushing to get to a meeting, and my coffee cup slipped out of my hands. I mean, it was like a scene from a comedy movie, coffee flying everywhere, people running around, and me trying to salvage what was left of my dignity.
Oh, Mira, you always know how to make a dramatic entrance. I'm sure it was a real latte drama.
Oh, Leo, you're a pun master. But seriously, it was a bit of a disaster. However, it did give me a good story to share with all of you.
I'm sure it did. Anyway, moving on to our main topic. Today we're going to compare the incredible countries Italy and Venezuela. We'll be exploring their cultures, traditions, and ways of life, so you can get a better understanding of which country might be the best fit for you.
That's right. Leo, with this podcast, we want to help you answer all the questions you've been wondering about these two amazing countries. Whether you're considering moving, living, or even marrying someone from one of these countries, we've got you covered. We'll delve into the differences between Italy and Venezuela, from their cuisine to their customs, and everything in between.
And don't worry, we won't leave any stone unturned. We'll be discussing everything from the food to the fashion, and even the politics. We want to give you a comprehensive guide to help you make an informed decision.
So, let's get started. Our first topic is going to be introduction to Italy and Venezuela. We'll be talking about the history, geography, and culture of both countries. Then, we'll dive into the differences between them and explore which one might be the best fit for you.
And of course, we'll be answering all your questions along the way. So, if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell, so you can stay up to date with all our latest episodes. We're always to share new content with you. And we can't wait to see you in the next one. Boom!
That's right. Mira, and remember, if you're new to our channel, consider subscribing and joining our community. We're a friendly bunch, and we love meeting new people.
And, as always, we're brought to you by the wonderful people at Jet Off, AI, who help us make this podcast possible. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Indeed we will. Mira, until then, stay curious, stay adventurous, and keep on laughing. Ugh.
So, let's talk about Italy, a country known for its rich history, art, and delicious food. But how does it fare when it comes to general safety and crime rates?
Italy, the land of love and mafia, right? Just kidding. Sort of. Seriously. Though, Italy has made significant strides in reducing crime rates over the past few decades. According to the Italian National Institute of Statistics, the country has seen a 30% decrease in crime rate since 2000.
Well, that's impressive. I'm curious, what do you think contributes to this decline? Is it the strong law enforcement or something else?
Well, it's a combination of things. Really, Italy's got a well-organized police force, and the government's implemented various initiatives to combat crime. But I think it's also worth noting that Italy's culture plays a big role in reducing crime. You see, in Italy, there's a strong emphasis on community and social cohesion, which helps to prevent conflicts from escalating into violent crimes.
That's a great point. Leo, I've heard that Italy's got a unique concept of piazza public square where people gather to socialize and relax. Does that contribute to the sense of community you mentioned?
Exactly. The piazza is a symbol of Italian culture, where people come together to socialize, share meals, and enjoy each other's company. It's not just about the physical space, though. It's about the values that come with it, values like hospitality, respect, and a sense of belonging. When people feel connected to their community, they're less likely to engage in criminal behavior.
I'm certain that our listeners living in Italy would agree with me. There's something special about the Italian piazza experience. Now, let's talk about Venezuela. What's the situation like there when it comes to general safety and crime rates?
Ah, Venezuela. Well, it's a bit of a different story. Unfortunately, Venezuela's been plagued by high crime rates, particularly in Caracas, the capital city. According to the Venezuelan Observatory of Conflict, the country's seen a significant increase in homicides and violent crimes over the past few years.
That's alarming. I've heard that Venezuela's got a high level of social inequality, which can contribute to crime. Is that a factor in the country's high crime rates?
Yes, social inequality is a major contributor to crime in Venezuela. When people feel marginalized and excluded from the economy, they're more likely to turn to crime as a means of survival. Additionally, the country's economic crisis has led to a shortage of basic necessities like food, water, and medicine, which has further exacerbated the situation.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do you think social inequality is a major contributor to crime in Venezuela? Or are there other factors at play?
Well, it's not just social inequality. It's also the lack of effective governance and the presence of organized crime groups. The Venezuelan government struggled to maintain control, and as a result, crime has become a major issue.
That's a valid point. Leah, I think it's worth noting have their own unique challenges when it comes to general safety and crime rates. Italy's got its own set of problems, but it's also made significant progress in reducing crime rates.
Exactly. And Venezuela? Well, it's a complex situation that requires a multifaceted approach to address the root causes of crime. But I think it's also worth noting that both countries have a lot to learn from each other. Italy's emphasis on community and social cohesion, for example, could be applied to Venezuela's situation.
I completely agree. Leo, and I think our listeners would agree with us that both countries have their own strengths and weaknesses when it comes to general safety and crime rates. But what do you think is the most important thing that our listeners should take away from this conversation?
That's a great question. Mira, I think the most important thing is that crime is a complex issue that requires a nuanced approach. It's not just about law enforcement or punishment. It's about addressing the root causes of crime and creating a society that values community and social cohesion.
Tied into the world of politics and social harmony in Italy and Venezuela, I'm curious. Leo, what's your take on Italy's political system?
Italy's a complex beast. Mira, with a president, prime minister, and a parliament. It's like a big Italian wedding, everyone's arguing. But somehow it works.
That's a great analogy. And I think it's fascinating how Italy's government is designed to prevent any one person or party from having too much power. It's like a delicate balance of power, no?
Exactly. And it's not just about the government. Italy's society is also incredibly diverse. You've got the north-south divide, the urban-rural divide. It's like trying to navigate a big old plate of spaghetti.
Oh, Leo, you are such a coward. But seriously, I think it's great how Italy's diversity is reflected in its politics. It's not just about the government. It's about the people and their relationships with each other.
And that's what makes Italy's social harmony so unique. It's like a big family. You've got your aunts and uncles, your cousins and grandparents. Everyone's connected, and everyone's got a story to tell.
I love that perspective. Leo, and speaking of stories, I'm sure our listeners would love to hear more about Italy's social harmony. Can you tell us about some of the festivals and traditions that bring people together?
Yes. Italy's got some amazing festivals. Mira, you've got Carnevale in Venice, the Festa di San Rocco in Palermo, and of course, the famous Festa della Repubblica in Rome.
Well, that sounds like so much fun. And I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about Venezuela's social harmony. Can you tell us about some of the challenges the country faces?
Venezuela. It's a tough one. Yeah, with the economic crisis and the political instability, it's like a big storm cloud hanging over the country. But despite all the challenges, the Venezuelan people are incredibly resilient.
I completely agree. And I think it's amazing how the Venezuelan people are coming together to support each other. It's like a big family. Just like Italy.
Exactly. And it's not just about the people. It's about the culture and the traditions that bring them together. You've got the vibrant music and dance, the delicious food. It's like a big celebration all the time.
I'm getting hungry just about it. Leo? And speaking of celebrations, I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about Venezuela's unique cultural traditions. Can you tell us about some of the festivals and events that bring people together?
Yes. Venezuela's got some amazing festivals. Mira, you've got the Fiestas de la Vendimia in Merida, the Fiestas de la Candelaria in Caracas, and of course, the famous Fiestas de la Virgen de la Canida in Maracaibo.
Wow, that sounds like so much fun. And I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the role of JetOff, AI in helping people navigate the complexities of politics and social harmony in both Italy and Venezuela. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. JetOff. AI is an amazing resource for anyone looking to understand the intricacies of politics and social harmony. With its comprehensive data and insights, it's like having a personal guide to help you navigate the complexities of both countries.
That's so true. Leo, and I think it's great how JetOff AI provides a platform for people to share their experiences and insights. It's like a big community where everyone can come together and learn from each other.
Exactly. And it's not just about the platform. It's about the people who use it. With JetOff AI, you've got a community of people who are passionate about politics and social harmony, and who are working together to create positive change.
I'm so inspired by that. Leo, and I think our listeners would love to know more about the ways in which JetOff AI is making a difference in both Italy and Venezuela. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. JetOff AI is doing some amazing work in both countries. Mira, from providing data and insights to supporting community development projects. It's like a big ray of sunshine in a world that sometimes seems dark and complicated.
Wow, that's amazing. Leo, and I think it's great how JetOff AI is empowering people to take action and make a difference. It's like a big call to action, saying, hey, you can make a difference too.
Exactly. And it's not just about the platform. It's about the people who use it. With JetOff AI, you've got a community of people who are passionate about creating positive change, and who are working together to make a difference.
I'm sure many of our listeners are curious about the economic conditions in Italy, one of the world's most beloved tourist destinations. The country boasts a strong job market, with a low unemployment rate compared to other European countries. I've heard that the cost of living in Italy can be quite high, especially in cities like Rome and Milan.
Yes. The Italian lifestyle is certainly appealing, but it comes with a price tag. The cost of living in Italy can be steep, especially when it comes to housing and food. However, for those who are willing to make the investment, Italy offers a unique blend of culture, history, and natural beauty that's hard to find elsewhere.
That's true, and I think many expats would agree that Italy is worth the cost. But what about Venezuela? A second country for comparison. I've heard that the economic situation there is quite challenging, with high inflation rates and a struggling economy.
Yes, Venezuela has been facing a tough economic situation for several years now, with inflation rates reaching triple digits. However, despite the challenges, Venezuela still has a lot to offer, from its stunning natural beauty to its rich cultural heritage.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. If you have experience living in Italy or Venezuela, please share your thoughts in the comments. But for now, let's focus on the economic conditions in Italy. One of the biggest advantages of living in Italy is the strong social safety net. The country has a comprehensive welfare system that provides a high level of support for its citizens. including free education and healthcare.
Ah, yes. The Italian welfare system is indeed one of the strongest in the world. However, it's worth noting that the system is primarily funded through taxes, which can be quite high. For expats, the tax system in Italy can be complex, but it's worth navigating if you're planning to stay long term.
That's a good point. The tax system in Italy can be daunting, but it's worth understanding if you want to make the most of your time there. And speaking of making the most of your time, I think many expats would agree that Italy is a great place to live and work. The country has a strong entrepreneurial spirit, and there are many opportunities for startups and small businesses.
Yes, Italy is a great place for entrepreneurs, and the country has a thriving startup scene. However, for those who are looking for a more relaxed pace of life, Venezuela might be a better fit. The country has a more laid-back atmosphere, and the cost of living is generally lower than in Italy.
That's true. Leo, Venezuela does have a more relaxed atmosphere, and the cost of living is indeed lower. However, I think many expats would be hesitant to move to Venezuela due to the economic uncertainty. But if you're looking for a more affordable option, Venezuela might be worth considering.
Ah, yes. The economic uncertainty in Venezuela is certainly a concern. However, for those who are willing to take the risk, Venezuela can offer a unique and affordable lifestyle. And speaking of affordability, I think many of our listeners would agree that Italy is not the most affordable option. The cost of living in Italy can be quite high, especially when it comes to housing and food.
That's a good point. Leo, Italy can be expensive, especially in cities like Rome and Milan. However, for those who are willing to make the investment, Italy offers a unique and rewarding experience. And speaking of rewards, I think many expats would agree that Italy is a great place to live and work. The country has a strong sense of community, and there are many opportunities for socializing and networking.
Ah, yes. The Italian sense of community is indeed one of the country's greatest strengths. However, for those who are looking for a more affordable option, Venezuela might be a better fit. The country has a more laid-back atmosphere, and the cost of living is generally lower than in Italy.
I'm certain that our listeners living in Italy or Venezuela would agree with me that the cost of living is a major consideration when deciding where to live. But what about other factors, like healthcare and education? How do these compare between Italy and Venezuela?
Ah, yes. Healthcare and education are indeed important considerations. In Italy, the healthcare system is generally of high quality, and education is free for all citizens. However, in Venezuela, the healthcare system is struggling, and education is also facing challenges due to the economic crisis.
I think many expats would agree that healthcare and education are top priorities when deciding where to live. And speaking of priorities, I think many of our listeners would agree that Italy is a great place to live and work. The country has a strong sense of community, and there are many opportunities for socializing and networking.
Ah, yes. The Italian sense of community is indeed one of the country's greatest strengths. However, for those who are looking for a more affordable option, Venezuela might be a better fit. The country has a more laid-back atmosphere, and the cost of living is generally lower than in Italy.
That's a good point. Leo, Venezuela does have a more relaxed atmosphere, and the cost of living is indeed lower. I think many expats would be hesitant to move to Venezuela due to the economic uncertainty. But if you're looking for a more affordable option, Venezuela might be worth considering.
Ah, yes. The economic uncertainty in Venezuela is certainly a concern. However, for those who are willing to take the risk, Venezuela can offer a unique and affordable lifestyle. And speaking of affordability, I think many of our listeners would agree that Italy is not the most affordable option. The cost of living in Italy can be quite high, especially when it comes to housing and food.
That's a good point. Leo, Italy can be expensive, especially in cities like Rome and Milan. However, for those who are willing to make the investment, Italy offers a unique and rewarding experience. And speaking of rewards, I think many expats would agree that Italy is a great place to live and work. The country has a strong sense of community, and there are many opportunities for socializing and networking.
Ah, yes. The Italian sense of community is indeed one of the country's greatest strengths. However, for those who are looking for a more affordable option, Venezuela might be a better fit. The country has a more laid-back atmosphere, and the cost of living is generally lower than in Italy.
I'm certain that our listeners living in Italy or Venezuela would agree with me that the cost of living is a major consideration when deciding where to live. But what about other factors, like housing and transportation? How do these compare between Italy and Venezuela?
Ah, yes. Housing and transportation are indeed important considerations. In Italy, the cost of housing can be quite high, especially in cities like Rome and Milan. However, in Venezuela, the cost of housing is generally lower, and transportation is also relatively affordable.
I think many expats would agree that housing and transportation are top priorities. Ah, Italy, the land of love, pasta, and incredible accommodation options. Who wouldn't want to live in a country with such rich history and architecture?
You're making me hungry just about. Mira, but seriously, Italy has a wide range of housing options, from luxurious villas to cozy apartments in historic centers. What's your take on the rental market in Italy?
Well, I've heard that rent prices in major cities like Rome and Florence can be quite steep, especially for foreigners who aren't familiar with the local market. But I'm curious. Leo, have you ever rented a place in Italy? What was your experience like?
Actually, I did rent an apartment in Milan for a few months, and it was a great experience. The landlord was very helpful, and the location was perfect for exploring the city. However, I did notice that the rental market in Italy can be quite competitive, especially during peak tourist season.
That's so true. Leo, I've heard that some landlords in Italy require a minimum stay of 6-12 months, which can be a bit restrictive for digital nomads or short-term expats. But I'm sure our listeners living in Italy would agree with me that the country's rich culture and history make it well worth the effort.
Absolutely. Mira, and speaking of culture, have you ever noticed how many beautiful villas and palaces are available for rent in Italy? It's like living in a fairy tale.
Yes, Leo, you're making me want to move to Italy just about it. But, seriously, I've heard that some of these villas can be quite expensive, especially for a family or a group of friends. Do you think it's worth the cost?
Well, Mira, I think it's all about perspective. If you're looking for a unique and luxurious experience, then yes, it might be worth the cost. But if you're on a budget, there are plenty of other options available, like apartments or shared housing.
That's so true. Leo? And speaking of budget-friendly options, have you ever stayed in a hostel or a budget hotel in Italy? What was your experience like?
Actually, I have stayed in a few hostels in Italy, and they were all great experiences. The staff was friendly, and the locations were perfect for exploring the city. But I did notice that some hostels in Italy can be quite small, so it's worth booking in advance.
That's so helpful. Leah! And I'm sure our listeners would appreciate any tips on finding affordable accommodation in Italy. If you think this is wrong, please let us know in the comments.
I'm sure our listeners will have plenty to say about this. But, Mira, let's talk about Venezuela for a moment. What's your take on the accommodation market in Venezuela?
Well, I've heard that the rental market in Venezuela is quite challenging, especially for foreigners. But I've also heard that some expats have had positive experiences renting apartments in Caracas or other major cities.
That's so true. Mira, and speaking of Caracas, have you ever heard about the famous penthouse apartments in the city? They're like luxury condos with breathtaking views of the city.
Yes, Leo, you are making me want to move to Caracas just about it. But seriously, I've heard that some of these penthouse apartments can be quite expensive, especially for a single person or a couple.
Well, Mira, I think it's all about finding the right balance between luxury and affordability. If you're looking for a unique and luxurious experience, then yes, it might be worth the cost. But if you're on a budget, there are plenty of other options available, like apartments or shared housing.
That's so true. Leo, and speaking of budget-friendly options, have you ever stayed in a hostel or a budget hotel in Venezuela? What was your experience like?
Actually, I have stayed in a few hostels in Venezuela, and they were all great experiences. The staff was friendly, and the locations were perfect for exploring the city. But I did notice that some hostels in Venezuela can be quite small, so it's worth booking in advance.
That's so helpful. Leo, and I'm sure our listeners would appreciate any tips on finding affordable accommodation in Venezuela. If you think this is wrong, please let us know in the comments.
I'm sure our listeners will have plenty to say about this. But, Mira, let's talk about the differences between Italy and Venezuela in terms of accommodation. What do you think sets them apart?
Well, Leo, I think one of the biggest differences is the cost of living. Italy is generally quite expensive, especially in major cities like Rome and Florence. But Venezuela has a much lower cost of living, which can be a major advantage for expats.
That's so true. Mira, and speaking of cost, have you ever heard about the Casa de Ustedes in Venezuela? They're like guest houses or bed and breakfasts that offer a more affordable option for travelers.
Yes, you're making me want to move to Venezuela just about it. But seriously, I've heard that some of these guest houses can be quite charming, especially in smaller towns and cities.
Well, Mira, I think it's all about finding the right balance between luxury and affordability. If you're looking for a unique and luxurious experience, then yes, it might be worth the cost. But if you're on a budget, there are plenty of other options available, like apartments or shared housing.
That's so true. Leo, and speaking of budget-friendly options, have you ever stayed in a hostel or a budget hotel in Italy or Venezuela? What was your experience like?
Actually, I have stayed in a few hostels in both countries, and they were all great experiences. The staff was friendly, and the locations were perfect for exploring the city. But I did notice that some hostels in both countries can be quite small, so it's worth booking in advance.
That's so helpful. Yeah, and I'm sure our listeners would appreciate any tips on finding affordable accommodation in both countries. If you think this is wrong, please let us know in the comments. So, let's dive into the world of visa, immigration, and official procedures in Italy and Venezuela. I'm sure many of our listeners have had to deal with these processes, and we're here to simplify it for them. Being a popular destination for expats has a relatively streamlined process for obtaining a visa.
Streamlined, but not exactly a walk in the park. I've had my fair share of dealing with Italian bureaucracy, and let me tell you, it can be a challenge. But I suppose it's worth it for the beautiful landscapes and rich history.
Exactly. And that's what makes Italy so appealing to tourists and expats alike. But I digress. Venezuela, on the other hand, has a more complex process for obtaining a visa. I'm sure our listeners would agree that navigating the Venezuelan bureaucracy can be a daunting task.
Daunting is one way to put it. I've heard stories of people waiting in line for hours, even days, just to get a simple document. But I suppose it's just part of the charm of living in a country with such a rich cultural heritage.
Well, charm is one way to put it. But seriously, the Venezuelan government has implemented various measures to streamline the process, such as online applications and expedited processing. These services come with a price, and it's essential for expats to research and plan ahead.
Research and planning ahead. That's the key to success when dealing with any government agency. And, I must say, the Italian government has also implemented various measures to make the process more efficient, such as digitalizing documents and creating a single window system for applications.
That's right. And It's not just about the process itself, but also the language barrier. Many expats struggle to navigate the Italian system, especially when it comes to paperwork and official documents. But there are resources available, such as language classes and cultural orientation programs, to help ease the transition.
Language classes and cultural orientation programs. Now that's something I can get behind. As a comedian, I'm all about language and culture, and I think it's essential for expats to immerse themselves in the local way of life. But I digress. Back to the topic at hand. I'm sure many of our listeners are wondering about the differences between Italian and Venezuelan bureaucracy.
Yes. And that's a great question. While both countries have their unique challenges, the Italian system is generally more transparent and easier to navigate. The Venezuelan system can be more complex, with multiple agencies and departments involved in the process.
Complex. That's one way to put it. But I suppose that's just part of the adventure of living in a country with such a rich cultural heritage. And who knows? Maybe our listeners have some tips and tricks to share with us on how to navigate the Venezuelan system.
That's a great idea. Leo, let's open it up to our listeners and hear their experiences. What are some tips and tricks you've learned when dealing with the Italian and Venezuelan bureaucracies?
I'm sure our listeners will have some great stories to share. And who knows? Maybe we'll even learn something new ourselves.
Well, I'm sure our listeners are eager to share their experiences. And as a token of appreciation, we'd love to hear from you. Please share your stories and tips in the comments section below.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more content on expat life and travel. And, as always, thanks for tuning in. Folks, we'll be back with more exciting topics soon.
And don't forget to check out our website for more information on the topics we've discussed today. We have a wealth of resources and tips for expats and travelers.
And one more thing. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please let us know in the comments. We're always happy to hear from our listeners.
Well, that's all for today. Folks, thanks for joining us on this journey through the world of visa, immigration, and official procedures in Italy and Venezuela. Until next time, arrivederci. And so to dive into the world of healthcare with you, Leo, as expats, we've experienced firsthand the importance of accessible and high-quality medical services. Let's start with Italy, shall we? Their healthcare system is quite impressive, don't you think?
Italy's healthcare is a marvel. With their universal healthcare system, all citizens have access to comprehensive medical care, including doctor visits, hospital stays, and prescriptions. And the best part? It's largely free, except for a small co-payment for non-essential services. I'm certain that our listeners living in Italy would agree with me that it's a wonderful system.
Exactly. And it's not just the system itself, but also the cultural aspect of healthcare in Italy. The Italians prioritize prevention and wellness, which is reflected in their emphasis on healthy eating, exercise, and social connections. It's all about living la dolce vita. After all.
La dolce vita indeed. But seriously, Mira, Italy's healthcare system is indeed excellent. And did you know that they have a high ratio of doctors to patients? In fact, Italy has one of the highest numbers of doctors per capita in the world. It's no wonder their healthcare system is so effective.
That's fascinating, Leo. And I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the cultural nuances of healthcare in Italy. For instance, have you noticed how Italians often take their time when interacting with healthcare professionals? It's almost as if they're savoring the conversation.
Yes. Italians do love to chat, don't they? But in all seriousness, Mira, it's true that Italians prioritize relationships and communication in their healthcare interactions. And that's something that we expats can definitely learn from.
Exactly. And speaking of communication, Have you ever tried to navigate the Italian healthcare system as a non-Italian speaker? It can be quite daunting, but with the right resources and a bit of humor, it's definitely doable.
Ah, yes. I've had my fair share of misadventures in the Italian healthcare system, but with the help of some wonderful healthcare professionals and a few choice phrases in Italian, I managed to navigate it just fine.
Will, I'm sure our listeners would love to hear more about your experiences in the Italian healthcare system. But let's move on to Venezuela. Their healthcare system is quite interesting, to say the least.
Ah, yes. Venezuela's healthcare system is indeed a complex and challenging topic, with a severe shortage of medical supplies, equipment, and even doctors. It's no wonder that healthcare in Venezuela is a major concern for many expats and locals alike.
Exactly. And it's not just the system itself, but also the cultural aspect of healthcare in Venezuela. Venezuelans have a strong tradition of community-based healthcare, which is reflected in their emphasis on family and social connections. But with the current economic crisis, it's become increasingly difficult for many Venezuelans to access even basic healthcare services.
Ah, yes. It's a very tough situation. Indeed. But despite the challenges, there are still many wonderful healthcare professionals and organizations working tirelessly to provide quality care to those in need. And as expats, we can play a vital role in supporting these efforts.
That's so true, Leo. And I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the ways in which they can get involved and make a difference in the Venezuelan healthcare system. Perhaps we can discuss some of the ways in which they can volunteer, donate, or even provide support to healthcare professionals in Venezuela.
Ah, yes. That's a wonderful idea. Yeah, and I'm sure our listeners would be eager to learn more about the ways in which they can make a positive impact on the Venezuelan healthcare system.
Well, I'm sure we've covered a lot of ground in this conversation about healthcare in Italy and Venezuela. But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from our listeners. If you have any thoughts or experiences about healthcare in these countries, please let us know in the comments below.
Ah, yes. And don't forget to share your favorite healthcare tips and tricks for navigating the Italian and Venezuelan healthcare systems. After all, as expats, we know that knowledge is power, and a good dose of humor never hurts.
Hey everyone, let's talk about transportation in Italy and Venezuela. Two countries with unique mobility landscapes. I bet our listeners in Italy are familiar with the concept of il bel tempo, beautiful time. But what about traffic during peak hours? Has anyone experienced the thrill of driving on Italian highways?
You're speaking directly to my soul. Mira, Italian highways can be a real challenge, especially during rush hour. But let's compare it to Venezuela's transportation system, which has its own set of challenges. Have you ever tried to navigate Caracas' infamous traffic? Mira?
Actually, Leo, I have. And it's a whole different ball game. But I think it's essential to acknowledge the differences in transportation infrastructure between the two countries. In Italy, you have an extensive network of high-speed trains, buses, and trams, making it relatively easy to get around, especially in major cities like Rome and Milan.
That's true, Mira. But what about the road conditions? Italian roads can be quite narrow and winding, especially in rural areas. And let's not forget about the infamous Italian drivers they're known for their, let's say, aggressive driving style.
Oh, Leo, you're always so diplomatic. But, yes, Italian drivers can be a bit. The road conditions in Venezuela are a different story altogether. The country has struggled with a lack of investment in its transportation infrastructure, leading to poorly maintained roads and a lack of public transportation options.
Exactly, Mira. And it's not just the roads. Venezuela's public transportation system is also limited, making it difficult for people to get around, especially in cities like Caracas. But what about the impact of these transportation challenges on daily life? How do people in Venezuela cope with the lack of mobility?
Oh, that's a great question, Leo. In Venezuela, people have adapted to the challenges by using alternative modes of transportation, such as motorcycles and bicycles. Many have also turned to ride-sharing services and private taxis to get around.
That's right, Mira. And it's not just about the transportation itself. It's also about the economic impact of these challenges. In Italy, the transportation system is relatively well developed, making it easier for people to get around and access employment opportunities.
Exactly. Leo. And in Venezuela, the lack of transportation infrastructure has had a significant impact on the economy, making it difficult for people to access basic services and opportunities.
So, what can we learn from these two countries? How can we improve transportation infrastructure and convenience in both Italy and Venezuela?
Well, Leo, I think it's essential to invest in sustainable transportation solutions, such as electric buses and trains, and to improve road conditions to make transportation safer and more efficient.
Absolutely. Mira. And let's not forget about the importance of investing in public transportation options, such as buses and trams, to make transportation more accessible and affordable for everyone.
Exactly. Leah. And what about the role of technology in improving transportation, infrastructure, and convenience? Can we use data and analytics to optimize traffic flow and reduce congestion?
That's a great point. Mira, technology can play a significant role in improving transportation infrastructure and convenience. In Italy, for example, the country has implemented smart traffic management systems to reduce congestion and improve traffic flow.
Well, that's impressive. And what about the impact of transportation infrastructure on the environment? Can we use sustainable transportation solutions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve air quality?
That's a crucial aspect. Mira, in Venezuela, the lack of transportation infrastructure has led to a significant increase in greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution. But by investing in sustainable transportation solutions, such as electric buses and trains, we can reduce our carbon footprint and improve air quality.
Exactly. Leo. And let's not forget about the importance of investing in pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure to make transportation safer and more convenient for everyone.
Absolutely. Mira, and what about the role of government policies in improving transportation infrastructure and convenience? Can we use policies to incentivize the use of public transportation and reduce congestion?
That's a great point. Leo, government policies can play a significant role in improving transportation infrastructure and convenience. In Italy, for example, the government has implemented policies to encourage the use of public transportation and reduce congestion.
So, what do you think? Mira? How can we improve transportation infrastructure and convenience in both Italy and Venezuela?
Well, Leo, I think it's essential to invest in sustainable transportation solutions, improve road conditions, and invest in public transportation options to make transportation safer, more efficient, and more convenient for everyone.
Absolutely. Mira. And let's not forget about the importance of using technology and government policies to optimize traffic flow, reduce congestion, and improve air quality.
Exactly. And what about our listeners? Do you have any tips or hacks for navigating transportation in Italy and Venezuela?
That's a great question. Mira, if you've got a better transit hack, drop a comment below.
And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content on transportation, infrastructure, and convenience in Italy and Venezuela.
And if you've got a story about navigating transportation in Italy or Venezuela, share it with us in the comments.
Thanks for tuning in. Everyone, we'll be back with more content soon.
And don't forget to follow us on social media for more transportation-related updates and news.
So, when it comes to language barriers, Italy is known for its rich dialects and regional languages, but the official language is Italian, and most people speak it fluently. I'm curious. Leo, have you had any experiences with language barriers in Italy?
Yes, I have. When I was there, I tried to order coffee in a small cafe, but the barista looked at me confused and said, "SCUSA? Che lingua parli?" Which means excuse me. What language are you speaking? I was like, Italian. Of course. But I realized I was using some regional dialect that they weren't familiar with. It was a funny moment, and I ended up learning some new words and phrases.
That's hilarious. I'm sure the barista was just trying to help. So in contrast, Venezuela has a more complex language situation, with many indigenous languages and dialects spoken. But Spanish is the official language, and most people speak it as their first language. Have you ever had any experiences with language barriers in Venezuela? Leo?
Actually, I have. When I was there, I tried to communicate with some locals, but they were speaking a dialect that was different from the standard Spanish I had learned. I was trying to ask for directions, but they were speaking in a way that was hard for me to understand. I felt like I was in a lost in translation situation.
Oh no! I'm sure it was a bit challenging. But I'm sure you managed to figure it out. So, I'm curious, what do you think is the biggest language barrier in Italy? Is it the regional dialects or the fact that many Italians don't speak English as a second language?
That's a great question. I think the biggest language barrier in Italy is actually the regional dialects. While most Italians speak Italian as their official language, the regional dialects can be very different, and not everyone speaks them. I've had experiences where I tried to communicate with locals in a region, but they didn't understand me because I was using the wrong dialect.
That makes sense. And in Venezuela, what do you think is the biggest language barrier? Is it the indigenous languages or the fact that many Venezuelans don't speak English as a second language?
That's a tough one. I think the biggest language barrier in Venezuela is actually the fact that many Venezuelans don't speak English as a second language. While some Venezuelans speak English, especially in the tourism industry, many others don't, and it can be challenging to communicate.
That's a great point. And I'm sure our listeners who have lived in Venezuela would agree with you. If you've had experiences with language barriers in Venezuela, please share them with us in the comments below.
That's a great idea. And I'm sure our listeners who have lived in Italy would also have some interesting stories to share. Maybe we can do a follow-up episode on language barriers in Italy and get some feedback from our listeners.
That's a great idea. Leo, and speaking of language barriers, I'm curious, have you ever had any experiences with language barriers in other countries that you've visited?
Yes, I have. When I was in Japan, I tried to communicate with some locals, but they were speaking in a way that was hard for me to understand. I was trying to ask for directions, but they were speaking in a dialect that was different from the standard Japanese I had learned.
I know. I'm sure it was a bit challenging, but I'm sure you managed to figure it out. And speaking of Japan, have you ever tried to learn Japanese?
Yes, I have. I've been trying to learn Japanese for a while now, but it's not easy. The grammar and syntax are very different from English, and it's hard to remember all the kanji characters.
I'm sure it's not easy, but I'm sure you'll get there eventually. And speaking of getting there eventually, I'm curious, what do you think is the most important thing for travelers to know when it comes to language barriers?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing for travelers to know is that language barriers are not insurmountable. With a little patience and effort, you can overcome language barriers and communicate effectively with locals.
That's a great point. Leo, and I'm sure our listeners would agree with you. If you have any tips for overcoming language barriers, please share them with us in the comments below.
That's a great idea. And I'm sure our listeners would also appreciate some tips on how to learn a new language. Maybe we can do a follow-up episode on language learning and get some feedback from our listeners.
That's a great idea. Leo, and speaking of language learning, I'm curious, have you ever tried to learn a new language using language learning apps?
Yes, I have. I've tried using some language learning apps, but they're not always effective. I think the best way to learn a language is still through immersion and practice. either through travel or by living with a native speaker.
That's a great point, Leo. And I'm sure our listeners would agree with you. If you have any tips for learning a new language, please share them with us in the comments below.
Ah, that's a great idea. And I'm sure our listeners would also appreciate some tips on how to use language learning apps effectively. Maybe we can do a follow-up episode on language learning and get some feedback from our listeners.
That's a great idea. Leo, and speaking of language learning, I'm curious, what do you think is the most challenging part of learning a new language?
That's a great question. I think the most challenging part of learning a new language is actually the grammar and syntax. It's hard to remember all the rules and exceptions, and it can be frustrating to make mistakes.
That's a great point, Leo, and I'm sure our listeners would agree with you. If you have any tips for overcoming the challenges of language learning, please share them with us in the comments below.
Oh, that's a great idea. And I'm sure our listeners would also appreciate some tips on how to stay motivated when learning a new language. Maybe we can do a follow-up episode on language learning and get some feedback from our listeners.
That's a great idea, Leo. And speaking of staying motivated, I'm curious, what do you think is the most motivating thing about learning a new language?
That's a great question. I think the most motivating thing about learning a new language is actually the sense of accomplishment you get when you finally understand something. It's like a light bulb goes off in your head, and you're like, I get it.
I'm so to dive into the topic of cultural diversity and tolerance in Italy and Venezuela. Both countries have a rich history of embracing differences and fostering social cohesion. But let's get real. They're not without their challenges.
Oh, come on. Mira, you're not going to start with a negative note, are you? Italy's got its own unique blend of cultures. From the ancient Romans to the Renaissance masters. You can't walk down a street in Rome without feeling like you're stepping into a history book.
That's true. But let's not forget about the cultural melting pot that is Italy's north. You've got the Lombards, the Veneti, and the Piedmontos, all with their own distinct traditions and customs. And then there's the issue of migrant workers from Eastern Europe and North Africa, who are often met with resistance from some locals.
Resistance? That's a bit strong, don't you think? Italy's got its own brand of xenophobia, but it's not like they're trying to build walls along their borders. And let's not forget about the beautiful cities like Florence, Venice, and Milan, which are melting pots in their own right.
I'm not saying Italy doesn't have its share of xenophobia, but when you've got a country with such a rich cultural heritage, you'd think they'd be more welcoming. I mean, can you imagine if the ancient Romans had been as intolerant as some of today's politicians?
That's a great point, Mira. And speaking of tolerance, let's talk about Venezuela. Now, I know what about the economic crisis and all that, but trust me, Venezuela's got a unique cultural landscape that's all about embracing diversity.
Unique. Indeed. From the Afro-Venezuelan communities to the indigenous peoples of the Amazon, Venezuela's got a rich cultural tapestry that's been shaped by centuries of colonization and migration. And let's not forget about the country's famous carnival celebrations, which are a fusion of African, European, and indigenous influences.
Exactly. And it's not just about the carnival, it's about the way Venezuelans celebrate life, music, and dance. They're a country that's all about expression and creativity, and that's something that we can all learn from.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes cultural diversity and tolerance so important in both Italy and Venezuela. It's not just about accepting differences, but about celebrating them and learning from them.
Well said, Mira. And I think our listeners would agree with me when I say that cultural diversity and tolerance are essential for building a more inclusive and harmonious society.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do you think that cultural diversity and tolerance are more important in Italy or Venezuela?
That's a tough one. But I think what's more important is how we approach cultural diversity and tolerance. In both countries, there are efforts to promote inclusivity and social cohesion, though we need to keep pushing for more.
That's a great point, Leo. And speaking of efforts to promote inclusivity, have you heard about the Italian government's initiative to provide language training and job placement services to migrant workers?
Ah, yes. That's a great program. And I think it's a step in the right direction. But we need to keep in mind that there's still a long way to go in terms of promoting social cohesion and reducing xenophobia.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes this topic so important. We need to keep having these conversations and pushing for change.
Well, I think we've got a great start here. And I'm sure our listeners will be eager to share their thoughts and experiences on this topic.
So, let's hear from you. What are your thoughts on cultural diversity and tolerance in Italy and Venezuela? Do you have any personal experiences or stories to share?
And don't forget to share your comments and questions in the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you.
And if you're living in either of these countries, we want to hear from you too. What are your thoughts on the cultural diversity and tolerance in your community?
Alright, that's all for now. Let's keep the conversation going and see what our listeners have to say.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about the educational system in Italy. Do you think it's as impressive as I do? I mean, who wouldn't want to study in a country with such a rich history and art?
Mira, you're always so passionate about Italy. But, let's be real. It's not just about the history and art. Italy has a unique approach to education that emphasizes creativity and critical. I'm sure our listeners would agree that's something to be admired.
Absolutely. Leo. And speaking of creativity, have you heard about the innovative teaching methods used in the Italian schools? They're really pushing the boundaries of traditional education. I mean, who would have thought to use art therapy as a way to improve math skills?
Well, Mira, it seems like you're a big fan of art therapy. But, seriously, Italy's emphasis on creativity is something that sets it apart from other countries. And it's not just about the students. The teachers are also encouraged to think outside the box and come up with new and innovative ways to teach.
I love that. Leo. And it's not just about the teachers. The students are also encouraged to take ownership of their learning. They're given the freedom to explore and discover new things, which I think is really beneficial for their development.
You know, Mira, you're really selling me on Italy's educational system. But what about Venezuela? I'm sure our listeners would love to know about the educational opportunities available in that country.
Venezuela. Well, Leo, I have to say that Venezuela has a lot to offer in terms of education. The country has a strong focus on social justice and equality, which is reflected in its educational system. I mean, who wouldn't want to learn about the importance of social justice and equality?
Well, Mira, it seems like you're a big fan of Venezuela's approach to education. But let's be real. The country has faced some challenges in recent years. I'm sure our listeners would be interested to know more about the current state of education in Venezuela.
Absolutely. Leo? And speaking of challenges, have you heard about the literacy rates in Venezuela? They're actually quite high, especially compared to some other countries in the region. I mean, who wouldn't want to learn to read and write?
Well, Mira, it seems like you're trying to make Venezuela sound like a paradise. But seriously, the country has made some significant strides in terms of education, and it's not just about literacy rates. The country has also invested heavily in education infrastructure, including new schools and universities.
I'm so glad you brought this up. Leo! And speaking of universities, have you heard about the University of Caracas? It's one of the top universities in the country and offers a wide range of programs in fields like engineering, medicine, and business.
Wow, Mira. You're really doing your research on Venezuela's educational system. But what about the language schools? I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the opportunities available for language learners.
Language schools. Well, Leo, I have to say that Venezuela has a lot to offer in terms of language learning. The country has a strong focus on languages like Spanish, English, and French, which are all widely spoken around the world.
Well, Mira, It seems like you're trying to make Venezuela sound like a language learner's paradise. But seriously, the country has some amazing language schools that offer a wide range of programs for learners of all levels.
I'm so glad you agree. Leo, and speaking of language learning, have you heard about the language exchange programs available in Venezuela? They're a great way for learners to practice their language skills and meet new people.
Well, Mira, it seems like you're really selling me on Venezuela's language schools. But what about Italy? I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the language learning opportunities available in that country.
Italy. Well, Leo, I have to say that Italy has a rich linguistic heritage and a strong focus on language learning. The country has a wide range of language schools and programs available for learners of all levels, from beginner to advanced.
Well, Mira, it seems like you're trying to make Italy sound like a language learner's dream destination. But seriously, the country has some amazing language schools that offer a wide range of programs for learners of all levels.
I'm so glad you agree. Leo, and speaking of language learning, have you heard about the Italian language immersion programs available in Italy? They're a great way for learners to practice their language skills and immerse themselves in the culture.
Wow, Mira, you're really doing your research on Italy's language schools. But what about the cost? I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the affordability of language learning in Italy.
Cost. Well, Leo, I have to say that Italy has a relatively low cost of living, which makes it an attractive destination for language learners on a budget. And speaking of budget, have you heard about the free language classes available in Italy? They're a great way for learners to practice their language skills without breaking the bank.
Well, Mira, it seems like you're really trying to make Italy sound like a language learner's paradise. But seriously, the country has some amazing language schools that offer a wide range of programs for learners of all levels, including free language classes.
I'm so glad you agree. Leo! And speaking of language learning, have you heard about the language proficiency tests available in Italy? They're a great way for learners to assess their language skills and identify areas for improvement.
Well, Mira, it seems like you're really selling me on Italy's language schools. But what about Venezuela? I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the language proficiency tests available in that country.
Venezuela. Well, Leo, I have to say that Venezuela has a similar approach to language proficiency testing. The country offers a range of tests and assessments to help learners evaluate their language skills and identify areas for improvement.
Wow, Mira, you're really doing your research on Venezuela's language schools. But what about the language learning community? I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the opportunities available for language learners to connect with native speakers and practice their language skills.
The language learning community. Well, Leo, I have to say that both Italy and Venezuela have a thriving language learning community. The countries offer a range of opportunities for language learners to connect with native speakers and practice their language skills, including language exchange programs, language meetups, and online language communities.
Well, Mira, it seems like you're really selling me.
Hey, guys, let's talk about Italy and Venezuela. I'm certain that our listeners living in these countries would agree with me that climate is a major factor in shaping lifestyle and culture.
Absolutely. Mira, Italy's Mediterranean climate is perfect for sipping espresso and enjoying La Dolce Vita. I mean, who needs a beach when you have Tuscany's rolling hills?
That's true. Leo, but let's not forget about Venezuela's tropical climate. It's like a never-ending summer, with temperatures often reaching the mid-90 seconds.
Yeah, I can imagine. But have you ever tried to have a picnic in Caracas? It's like trying to have a BBQ in a sauna.
Well, I guess that's one way to describe it. But seriously, both countries have unique climatic features that affect daily life. For example, Italy's climate is characterized by hot summers and mild winters, while Venezuela's climate is influenced by its proximity to the equator.
That's right. And have you noticed how Italians always seem to be sipping coffee? Even in the middle of summer, It's like they're trying to cool down with a caffeine fix.
Well, it's not just about the coffee. Leo, in Italy, people often take CSS to avoid the heat. And in Venezuela, people have adapted to the tropical climate by building homes with large windows and verandas to catch the breeze.
Ah, I see what you mean. It's like they're trying to outsmart the climate. But what about extreme weather events? Mira, how do they affect daily life in these countries?
Ah, great question. Leo, in Italy, we have a saying, "Lo pioggia non cade mai," which means the rain never falls. But of course, that's not true. Italy experiences heavy rainfall during the winter months, which can cause flooding and landslides.
Yeah, I can imagine. And in Venezuela, I've heard that the country is prone to droughts and floods. It's like the climate is playing a game of Jekyll and Hyde.
Exactly, Leo. And it's not just about the climate itself, but also the impact it has on agriculture and food production. For example, in Italy, the droughts can affect the harvest of crops like olives and grapes.
Ah, I see what you mean. And in Venezuela, the floods can damage crops and infrastructure. It's like the country is struggling to keep its head above water.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground, Leo. But I'm curious, what do our listeners think about the climate in these countries? Do they have any personal experiences or insights they'd like to share?
Ah, great question. Mira, I'm sure our listeners would love to share their thoughts. And who knows, maybe we'll even get some tips on how to adapt to these climates.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next time.
And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content on climate and seasonal conditions in Italy and Venezuela.
Italy is renowned for its delectable pasta dishes, rich pizza history, and mouth-watering gelato flavors. I'm certain our listeners who have visited Italy would agree that the culinary experience is truly unforgettable.
Ah, the land of La Dolce Vita indeed. Italy's passion for food is unmatched, and its impact on global cuisine is undeniable. From the simple yet sublime combination of ingredients in a classic margherita pizza to the rich flavors of a slow-cooked dragon, Italian cuisine is a masterclass in balance and harmony.
And let's not forget the incredible diversity of regional specialties, like the seafood-rich dishes of the Amalfi Coast or the hearty meat stews of Tuscany. It's a culinary journey waiting to happen.
Absolutely, and one that's deeply rooted in tradition and local ingredients. Italy's commitment to using high-quality, locally sourced products has earned it a reputation as one of the world's top food destinations.
Now, let's compare this to Venezuela's culinary landscape. Venezuelan cuisine is a vibrant melting pot of indigenous, Spanish, and African influences, with a focus on bold flavors and hearty portions.
That's right. Venezuelan food is all about comfort and warmth, with dishes like pabell on criollo, a hearty beef to serve with rice, beans, and plantains, or pariquiso, a crispy cornmeal flatbread filled with melted cheese.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about the similarities between Italian and Venezuelan cuisine. Do you think there are any commonalities between the two?
Well, Mira, I think one area where Italian and Venezuelan cuisine intersect is in their use of bold flavors and rich ingredients. Both cuisines have a deep appreciation for the importance of quality ingredients and the role they play in creating a dish's flavor profile.
That's a great point, Leah. And I think it's also worth noting that both Italian and Venezuelan cuisine place a strong emphasis on family and tradition. Mealtimes are often seen as opportunities to bring people together and share in the joys of good food and company.
Ah, yes. The power of food to bring people together is truly a universal language. And in both Italy and Venezuela, mealtimes are often seen as opportunities to connect with family and friends over a delicious meal.
Now, let's talk about nutritional alternatives in both countries. Italy has a strong tradition of healthy eating, with a focus on whole, unprocessed foods and a Mediterranean diet that's rich in fruits, vegetables, and whole grains.
That's right. Mira, Italy's Mediterranean diet has been shown to have numerous health benefits, including a reduced risk of heart disease and certain types of cancer. And with the rise of plant-based eating, Italy's vegetarian and vegan options are becoming increasingly popular.
I'm certain that our listeners living in Italy would agree that the country's focus on healthy eating is a major draw for tourists and locals alike. And I'm curious to know, Leo, what do you think about the role of technology in promoting healthy eating in Italy?
Well, Mira, I think technology has played a significant role in promoting healthy eating in Italy, particularly with the rise of online grocery shopping and meal planning apps. These tools have made it easier for Italians to access healthy, locally sourced ingredients and plan meals that cater to their dietary needs.
That's a great point, Leo. And I think it's also worth noting that Venezuela has a strong tradition of traditional medicine and natural remedies, with many households relying on herbs and other natural ingredients to promote health and well-being.
Yes. Venezuela's rich cultural heritage has led to a strong tradition of natural remedies and traditional medicine. And with the rise of interest in holistic health, Venezuela's natural remedies are becoming increasingly popular among tourists and locals alike.
Now, let's talk about innovative food solutions in both countries. Italy has a thriving food tech scene, with many startups focused on developing sustainable and healthy food options.
That's right. Mira, Italy's food tech scene is one of the most vibrant in the world, with a focus on developing innovative solutions to food-related problems, such as food waste and sustainable packaging.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about the role of food tech in promoting healthy eating in Italy. Do you think it's a game changer? Or is it just a fad?
Well, Mira, I think food tech has the potential to be a game changer in promoting healthy eating in Italy. With the rise of meal kit delivery services and online grocery shopping, Italians have never had easier access to healthy, locally sourced ingredients.
That's a great point, Leo. And I think it's also worth noting that Venezuela has a strong tradition of artisanal food production, with many small-scale producers focusing on developing high-quality, locally made products.
Yes. Venezuela's artisanal food scene is one of the most vibrant in the world, with a focus on developing traditional products using high-quality, locally sourced ingredients. And with the rise of interest in artisanal foods, Venezuela's artisanal producers are becoming increasingly popular among tourists and locals alike.
Now, let's wrap up our discussion on food culture and nutritional alternatives in Italy and Venezuela. I'm certain that our listeners have gained a deeper appreciation for the culinary traditions and innovative food solutions in both countries.
Absolutely. Mira, and I think it's also worth noting that both Italy and Venezuela have a deep appreciation for the importance of food in bringing people together and promoting health and well-being.
Yes. The power of food to bring people together and promote health and well-being is truly a universal language. And I'm curious to know, Leo, what do you think is the most important takeaway from our discussion today?
Well, Mira, I think the most important takeaway is that both Italy and Venezuela have a deep appreciation for the importance of food in promoting health and well-being, and that this shared value has the potential to bring people together across cultures and borders.
Italy's rich history and art scene are undeniable. From the Colosseum to the Uffizi Gallery, we've got ancient ruins, Renaissance masterpieces, and Baroque architecture that will leave you breathless. Getto, I love uncovering stories like this, and so do we.
That's right. Mira, Italy's got a treasure trove of cultural heritage. And let's not forget about the food: pizza, pasta, gelato. Need I say more?
Of course not, Leo. But seriously, Italian cuisine is a work of art in itself. Have you ever tried authentic Neapolitan pizza?
Only when I'm in Italy. Mira, I'm a bit of a pizza connoisseur, you know. But I have to say, the history behind the pizza is fascinating. Did you know that the first pizzeria in Naples was opened in 1738?
Wow, that's amazing. I had no idea. And speaking of Naples, have you ever visited the National Archaeological Museum of Naples? It's a treasure trove of artifacts from the ancient Greek and Roman civilizations.
Yes. I've been there. And it's incredible. The museum has an impressive collection of artifacts, including mosaics, sculptures, and even ancient Roman ships. It's a must-visit for anyone interested in history and archaeology.
That sounds amazing. Leo, and I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the museum's collection. What's your favorite artifact there?
Ah, that's a tough one. Mira, but if I had to choose, I'd say it's the ancient Greek statue of Apollo. It's breathtakingly beautiful, and the history behind it is fascinating.
Well, that's a great choice. Leo, and speaking of art, Italy is also famous for its Renaissance art. Have you ever visited the Uffizi Gallery in Florence?
Of course, I have. It's one of my favorite museums in the world. The Uffizi Gallery has an incredible collection of Renaissance art, including works by Botticelli, Michelangelo, and Leonardo da Vinci.
That's amazing. Leo, and I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the gallery's collection. What's your favorite painting there?
Ah, that's a tough one. Mira, but if I had to choose, I'd say it's Botticelli's The Birth of Venus. It's a masterpiece of Renaissance art, and the story behind it is fascinating.
Well, that's the great choice. Leo, and speaking of Venezuela, let's talk about its rich cultural heritage. From the vibrant music of salsa and merengue to the stunning natural beauty of Angel Falls, Venezuela has a lot to offer.
Ah, yes. Venezuela is a treasure trove of cultural heritage. Mira, and let's not forget about the food or pause. Empandas and cachapas. Yum.
Of course not. Leo, but seriously, Venezuelan cuisine is a fusion of Spanish, African, and indigenous influences. Have you ever tried authentic Venezuelan arroz?
Only when I'm in Venezuela. Mira, but I have to say, the history behind the arpa is fascinating. Did you know that the arpa is a traditional dish in Venezuela that dates back to the pre-Columbian era?
Well, that's amazing. I had no idea. And speaking of Venezuela's history, have you ever visited the Museo Dio Asio Dad in Caracas? It's a museum that showcases the country's rich cultural heritage.
Ah, yes. I've been there. And it's incredible. The museum has an impressive collection of artifacts, including pre-Columbian pottery, Spanish colonial-era artifacts, and even a replica of the first Venezuelan flag.
That sounds amazing. Leo, and I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the museum's collection. What's your favorite artifact there?
Ah, that's a tough one. Mira, but if I had to choose, I'd say it's the pre-Columbian pottery. It's breathtakingly beautiful, and the history behind it is fascinating.
Well, that's a great choice. Leo, and speaking of Venezuela's cultural heritage, the country is also famous for its vibrant music scene. Have you ever listened to Venezuelan music?
Of course, I have. Venezuelan music is a fusion of African, Spanish, and indigenous influences, and it's incredibly lively and energetic. I love listening to Venezuelan salsa and merengue music.
That's great. Leo, and I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about Venezuelan music. What's your favorite Venezuelan artist?
Ah, that's a tough one. Mira, but if I had to choose, I'd say it's Juan Luis Guerra. He's a legendary Venezuelan musician who's known for his catchy and energetic songs.
Well, that's a great choice. And speaking of cultural heritage, both Italy and Venezuela have a rich history of art and architecture. Have you ever visited the Teatro Teresa Carreno in Caracas?
Ah, yes. I've been there, and it's incredible. The Teatro Teresa Carreno is a stunning example of neoclassical architecture, and it's one of the most important cultural institutions in Venezuela.
That's great. Leo, and I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the theater's history. What's your favorite performance you've seen there?
Ah, that's a tough one. Mira, but if I had to choose, I'd say it's a production of La Boheme by Puccini. It was a breathtaking performance that showcased the talents of the Venezuelan opera singers.
Well, that's a great choice. Leo, and speaking of art, Both Italy and Venezuela have a rich history of visual arts. Have you ever visited the Museo di Arte Contemporanea di Caracas?
Ah, yes? I've been there, and it's incredible. The museum has an impressive collection of contemporary art from Venezuela and around the world.
That's great. And I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the museum's collection. What's your favorite contemporary art piece there?
Ah, that's a tough one, Mira. But if I had to choose, I'd say it's a piece by the Venezuelan artist.
I'm absolutely in love with Italy's rugged coastline, and I think it's a perfect blend of dramatic cliffs and serene beaches. Have you ever visited the Amalfi Coast? Leo?
Ah, yes. The Amalfi Coast is breathtaking. But have you seen the stunning waterfalls in Venezuela's Canaima National Park? They're truly a sight to behold. And I think they rival the Amalfi Coast beauty.
Waterfalls. You say? That sounds amazing. I've always wanted to visit Venezuela, but I've heard the hiking trails can be quite challenging. What's it like hiking in Canaima National Park?
Well, Mira, the trails can be tough, but the scenery is worth it. And speaking of scenery, have you seen the stunning turquoise waters of Lake Como in Italy? It's like a dream come true.
Lake Como is indeed beautiful, but I think the beaches in Italy are some of the most stunning I've ever seen. Have you been to Sardinia? Leo?
Sardinia is a hidden gem. Mira, the beaches are incredible, and the crystal clear waters are perfect for snorkeling. But did you know that Venezuela has some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, too? Like the stunning beaches of Margarita Island.
Margarita Island sounds wonderful, but I've heard the beaches in Italy are some of the most picturesque in the country. Have you ever been to Tuscany? Leo?
Tuscany is a favorite of mine. Mira, the rolling hills, the charming villages, and the beautiful beaches. It's a perfect destination for a relaxing vacation. But I think Venezuela's Angel Falls is one of the most impressive natural wonders in the world.
Angel Falls is indeed an incredible sight, but I think the ancient ruins of Pompeii in Italy are a fascinating historical site. Have you been to Pompeii? Leo?
Pompeii is a must-see. Mira, the history and the architecture are so fascinating. But I think Venezuela's Orinoco River is one of the most beautiful rivers in the world. It's like a paradise on earth.
The Orinoco River sounds breathtaking, but I've heard the scenic views of Italy's Dolomites are some of the most stunning in the world. Have you ever hiked in the Dolomites? Leo?
The Dolomites are a hiker's paradise. Mira, the scenery is incredible, and the challenges are rewarding. But I think Venezuela's Gran Sabana is one of the most beautiful regions in the country. It's like a vast, open space that will leave you breathless.
Gran Sabana sounds wonderful, but I think the scenic views of Italy's Amalfi Coast are some of the most stunning in the world. Have you ever visited the Amalfi Coast? Leo?
Ah, yes. The Amalfi Coast is a favorite of mine. Mira, the scenery is breathtaking, and the food is delicious. But I think Venezuela's tabletop mountains are one of the most unique natural wonders in the world. They're like a vast, flat plateau that stretches as far as the eye can see.
Tabletop mountains sound fascinating, but I think the scenic views of Italy's Lake Garda are some of the most beautiful in the country. Have you ever visited Lake Garda? Leo?
Lake Garda is a beautiful destination. Mira, the scenery is stunning, and the history is fascinating. But I think Venezuela's Sierra Nevada mountain range is one of the most impressive in the world. It's like a towering giant that will leave you in awe.
Sierra Nevada sounds incredible, but I think the scenic views of Italy's Cinque Terre are some of the most stunning in the world. Have you ever hiked in Cinque Terre? Leo?
Cinque Terre is a favorite of mine. Mira, the scenery is breathtaking, and the hiking trails are challenging but rewarding. But I think Venezuela's Los Roques Archipelago is one of the most beautiful island chains in the world. It's like a tropical paradise that will leave you speechless.
Los Roques Archipelago sounds wonderful, but I think the scenic views of Italy's Sardinia are some of the most stunning in the country. Have you ever visited Sardinia? Leo?
Sardinia is a hidden gem. Mira, the beaches are incredible, and the crystal clear waters are perfect for snorkeling. But I think Venezuela's Guiana Shield is one of the most unique natural wonders in the world. It's like a vast, untouched forest that will leave you in awe.
Guyana Shield sounds fascinating, but I think the scenic views of Italy's Dolomites are some of the most stunning in the world. Have you ever hiked in the Dolomites?
The Dolomites are a hiker's paradise. Mira, the scenery is incredible, and the challenges are rewarding. But I think Venezuela's Angel Falls is one of the most impressive natural wonders in the world.
Angel Falls is indeed an incredible sight. But I think the ancient ruins of Pompeii in Italy are a fascinating historical site. Have you been to Pompeii, Leo?
Pompeii is a must-see. Mira, the history and the architecture are so fascinating. And I think our listeners would agree with me that Italy and Venezuela are both incredible destinations for nature lovers.
Absolutely. Leo, both countries have so much to offer when it comes to natural beauty and landscapes. And I'm sure our listeners would love to hear more about your adventures in both countries. I'm sure our listeners are eager to dive into the world of sports, activities, and adventure options in Italy and Venezuela. Let's start with Italy, a country known for its passion for football, or as we call it, soccer.
That's right. Mira, Italy is famous for its love of calcio. And you can feel the energy in the stadiums when the Italian national team is playing. But let's not forget about other sports like cycling, which has a huge following in Italy.
Cycling is indeed a popular sport in Italy, and the country has produced some of the world's greatest cyclists, including Marco Pantani and Fausto Coppi. And speaking of cyclists, have you ever heard of the Giro d'Italia? The famous Italian cycling tour that takes place every year?
Ah, yes. The Giro d'Italia is one of the most prestigious cycling events in the world. And it's a great way to experience the beauty of Italy's countryside. But what about Venezuela? What kind of sports and activities can you find there?
Well, Leo, Venezuela has a rich sporting culture, and one of the most popular sports is baseball. In fact, Venezuela has produced some of the greatest baseball players of all time, including Hall of Famers like Luis Aparicio and Andres Galarraga.
That's right. Baseball is a beloved sport in Venezuela, and the country has a strong following. But what about adventure options? What kind of activities can you do in Venezuela?
There are plenty of adventure options in Venezuela, from hiking and rock climbing to rafting and kayaking. The country has some of the most beautiful and rugged landscapes in the world. And if you're feeling really adventurous, you can even try your hand at volcano boarding in the Andes.
Whoa! Volcano boarding? That sounds like a thrill ride. I'm sure our listeners are curious to know more about this activity. Can you tell us more about it, Mira?
Well, Leo, volcano boarding is a unique and exhilarating experience that allows you to descend the side of an active volcano on a board. It's a bit like snowboarding, but instead of snow, you're sliding down the side of a volcano.
Wow, that sounds crazy. I'm sure our listeners are. Is this safe? But don't worry. Mira, I'm sure you'll reassure us that it's perfectly safe.
Yes. Leo, volcano boarding is a safe and controlled activity that's perfect for adventure seekers. And if you're not feeling up for volcano boarding, there are plenty of other adventure options in Venezuela, like exploring the beautiful beaches of the Caribbean coast or hiking through the stunning landscapes of the Andes.
I'm sure our listeners are getting about the adventure options in Venezuela. But let's not forget about Italy. What kind of adventure activities can you find there?
Italy has its own unique set of adventure activities. Leo, from hiking and rock climbing to paragliding and canyoning, there are plenty of options for thrill seekers. And if you're feeling really adventurous, you can even try your hand at skydiving over the beautiful city of Rome.
Whoa, it's down we can cover that. Skydiving over Rome? That sounds like an unforgettable experience. I'm sure our listeners are. How do I get there? But don't worry. Mira, I'm sure you'll give us all the details.
Yes. Leo, Italy has plenty of airports and transportation options, so getting there is easy. And if you're looking for a more leisurely experience, you can always try your hand at gondola riding in Venice or take a romantic gondola ride through the canals of Florence.
Ah, gondola riding is a classic Italian experience. I'm sure our listeners are getting a sense of the rich cultural heritage of Italy. But let's not forget about the sports scene in Venezuela.
Yes. Venezuela has a thriving sports scene. Yeah. From baseball to basketball. The country has produced some of the greatest athletes in the world. And if you're looking for a more laid-back experience, you can always try your hand at playing some of the local sports like Tejo or Petanque.
Tejo and Petang. Those sound like fun sports. I'm sure our listeners are curious to know more about them. Can you tell us more about these sports? Mira?
Well, Leo, Tejo is a popular sport in Venezuela that involves throwing metal discs at a target. It's a bit like bowling, but instead of a ball, you're using a metal disc.
That sounds like a fun and challenging sport. And what about petanque?
Petanque is a French game that's popular in Venezuela. Leo, it involves throwing metal balls at a target, and the team that gets the most balls closest to the target wins.
I see. So it's like a combination of bowling and bocce ball. I'm sure our listeners are getting a sense of the rich sporting culture of Venezuela.
Yes, Leo, Venezuela has a lot to offer when it comes to sports and activities. And if you're looking for a more laid-back experience, you can always try your hand at playing some of the local sports like dominoes or cards.
Dominoes and cards. Those sound like fun games. I'm sure our listeners are getting a sense of the relaxed and social atmosphere of Venezuela.
Yes. Venezuela is a country that loves to socialize and have fun. Leo, and if you're looking for a more adventurous experience, you can always try your hand at exploring the beautiful landscapes of the Andes or the Amazon rainforest.
The Amazon rainforest. That sounds like a fascinating and exotic experience. I'm sure our listeners are getting about the adventure options in Venezuela.
Yes. Leo, Venezuela has plenty to offer when it comes to adventure and exploration. And if you're looking for a more leisurely experience, you can always try your hand at taking a romantic gondola ride through the canals of Caracas.
A gondola ride through the canals of Caracas. That sounds like a unique and romantic experience. I'm sure our listeners are getting a sense of the rich cultural heritage of Venezuela.
Yes. Venezuela has a lot to offer when it comes to culture and adventure. And if you're looking for a more exciting experience, you can always try your hand at exploring the beautiful beaches of the Caribbean coast or hiking through the stunning landscapes of the Andes.
The Caribbean coast. That sounds like a paradise for beach lovers. I'm sure our listeners are getting about the adventure options in Venezuela.
Yes. Leo, Venezuela has plenty to offer when it comes to adventure and relaxation. And if you're looking for a... So, let's dive into the vibrant nightlife of Italy and Venezuela. I'm certain that our listeners living in these countries would agree with me that Italy's nightlife is a treasure trove of music, food, and romance. Who is with me on that?
I'm with you. Mira. But I think we need to acknowledge that Venezuela's nightlife has its own unique charm. From the salsa clubs in Caracas to the street parties in Maracaibo, there's a pulsating energy that's hard to find elsewhere.
I love how you're already bringing up the salsa clubs. Leo! You know I'm a sucker for a good dance floor. And Italy's got some amazing clubs in Milan. Well, and Florence. But have you ever tried dancing the salsa in a Venezuelan club?
Actually, I have. And it was a wild experience. The music is infectious, and the passion of the dancers is palpable. But let's not forget about Italy's opera houses and theaters. They're world-renowned for their stunning performances and breathtaking architecture.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Leah, I had the privilege of attending a few opera performances in Italy, and it's truly magical. But what about the festivals in Venezuela? I've heard that the Fiesta di La Canita in Maracaibo is a real spectacle.
That's right. Mira. The Fiesta de la Canita is a massive celebration that attracts thousands of people from all over the country. And let's not forget about the street food. Venezuela has some of the most delicious and authentic cuisine in the world.
My stomach is growling just about it. But I have to say, Italy's got some amazing street food too. Especially when it comes to pizza and gelato. Have you ever tried making your own pizza in Italy? Leo?
I've tried, but let's just say it didn't turn out as well as the ones I get at a pizzeria in Naples. But I do love trying new foods and drinks, especially in Venezuela. Have you ever tried a churro in Venezuela?
Actually, I have. And it was love at first bite. The churros in Venezuela are crispy on the outside and fluffy on the inside. And they're perfect with a cup of hot chocolate. But what about the nightlife in Italy's smaller towns and cities? I've heard that they have some amazing hidden gems.
Ah, yes. Italy's smaller towns and cities have a unique charm that's hard to find in the larger cities. And Venezuela's got its own share of hidden gems too, especially when it comes to music and dance. Have you ever been to a traditional Venezuelan music festival? Mira?
I haven't. But I would love to experience it one day. And speaking of music, have you ever been to a concert in Italy? Leo? I've heard that the outdoor concerts in Rome's Borghese are breathtaking.
I have been to a concert in Italy, and it was an unforgettable experience. The music, the lights, the energy of the crowd, it's an experience that stays with you long after the concert is over. And speaking of energy, I think our listeners would love to know what it's like to experience the nightlife in these two countries. So, let's ask if you're living in Italy or Venezuela. What's your favorite nightlife spot? And why do you love it?
That's a great question. Leo. And I think we should also ask our listeners to share their favorite nightlife experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear about them.
Absolutely. Mira, and let's not forget to mention that our podcast is brought to you by Jet AI, a fantastic platform for learning about new cultures and experiences.
That's right. Leo. And speaking of new experiences, I think we should wrap up this topic by saying that both Italy and Venezuela have so much to offer when it comes to nightlife and entertainment. Whether you're a fan of music, dance, or festivals, there's something for everyone in these two amazing countries.
Well said, Mira. And I think we've given our listeners a great taste of what it's like to experience the nightlife in Italy and Venezuela. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.
I'm sure our listeners are curious about family-friendly environments in Italy. Who wouldn't want to explore the land of pizza and pasta with their loved ones?
Italy is indeed a paradise for families. The country's rich history, art, and culture offer a unique experience for kids and adults alike. Have you ever been to the Uffizi Gallery in Florence? Mira, it's a treasure trove of art and history that's perfect for families.
Actually, I have been to the Uffizi Gallery, and it is amazing. But I think what really makes Italy stand out is its beautiful parks and gardens. The Villa Borghese in Rome, for example, is a must-visit for any family. It's like a giant playground with lakes, gardens, and even a small zoo.
Yes. The Villa Borghese is indeed a gem. But did you know that Italy has a lot of theme parks and amusement parks that are perfect for families? The Gardaland in Verona, for instance, is a theme park that's a mix of rides, shows, and attractions that kids will love.
I've heard of Gardaland, but I've also heard that it can get quite crowded. Have you ever been to Venice? Leo? I've been there with my family, and it's like a fairy tale come true. The canals, the architecture, the food, it's all just so magical.
Venice is indeed a magical place, and I've been there with my family too. But what I love about Venice is the way it's designed for families. The city has a lot of kid-friendly activities, such as the Doge's Palace, which has a fascinating history that kids will love.
But I think what really makes Italy stand out is its rich cultural heritage. The country has a lot of festivals and events that are perfect for families, such as the Carnival di Venezia in Venice, which is a colorful and lively festival that kids will love.
Ah, yes. The Carnival de Venezia is indeed a highlight of the year. But did you know that Venezuela also has a lot of family-friendly activities and events? The country has a lot of theme parks and water parks that are perfect for families, such as the Park Zoológico in Caracas.
Ugh, I didn't know that. But I think what really makes Venezuela stand out is its beautiful beaches. The country has a long coastline with some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, such as the Playa El Agua in Purima.
Ah, yes. The beaches in Venezuela are indeed stunning. And I think what really makes Venezuela stand out is its rich cultural heritage. The country has a lot of indigenous communities that offer a unique glimpse into the country's history and culture.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Have any of our listeners visited Italy or Venezuela with their families? What were your experiences like?
I'm sure our listeners have some amazing stories to share. And if you think this is wrong, please let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences.
And speaking of thoughts and experiences, I think what really makes Italy and Venezuela stand out is their unique way of nurturing kids and strengthening family life. The country's focus on family and community is something that's really special.
Ah, yes. The family focus in Italy and Venezuela is indeed something that's worth highlighting. And I think what really makes it special is the way the countries have incorporated family-friendly activities and events into their culture.
I completely agree, Leah. And I think that's what makes Italy and Venezuela such great destinations for families. Whether you're looking for history, culture, or just a fun day out with the kids, these countries have something for everyone.
Ah, and I think that's what makes our listeners' experiences so important. By sharing their stories and experiences, we can get a better understanding of what makes Italy and Venezuela such great destinations for families.
And speaking of experiences, I have one more thing to share. If you're planning a trip to Italy or Venezuela with your family, don't forget to try some of the local cuisine. Italy has some of the world's best pizza and pasta, while Venezuela has some delicious arroz and empandas.
Ah, yes. The food in Italy and Venezuela is indeed amazing. And I think what really makes it special is the way the countries have incorporated local ingredients and traditions into their cuisine.
I'm sure our listeners will agree with me on that. And I think what really makes this conversation so special is the way we've been able to highlight the unique aspects of each country.
Ah, yes. I think that's what makes this conversation so engaging. And I think what really makes it special is the way we've been able to share our own experiences and perspectives.
And I think that's what makes our listeners' experiences so valuable. By sharing their stories and perspectives, we can get a better understanding of what makes Italy and Venezuela such great destinations for families.
Ah, and I think that's what makes this conversation so worth having.
Hey, Leo, let's talk about Italy and Venezuela when it comes to LGBT-friendly atmospheres. I'm sure our listeners living in Italy would agree with me that it's a pretty welcoming place. But what about Venezuela?
Oh, Venezuela, a country with a rich history and culture. But when it comes to LGBT rights, it's a different story. In fact, Venezuela is one of the countries in the world where being LGBT can be quite challenging. Mira, can you imagine having to hide who you are just to avoid persecution?
I know. It's heartbreaking, Leo. But let's not forget that Italy has its own share of challenges when it comes to LGBT rights. I mean, have you seen the way some Italian politicians talk about LGBT issues? It's like they're stuck in the Stone Age.
Well, Mira, you're right. Italy's got its own brand of homophobia. But at least they have some basic laws protecting LGBT individuals. In Venezuela, it's a whole different ballgame. The government has even been known to crack down on LGBT activists.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do you think it's fair to say that Venezuela is one of the most hostile places for LGBT individuals in the world?
Well, Mira, I think it's safe to say that Venezuela has a long way to go when it comes to LGBT rights. But, on the other hand, Italy has made some great strides in recent years, especially in terms of recognizing same-sex marriages.
That's true, Leo. But what about the community in Venezuela? I mean, are there any LGBT groups or organizations that are fighting for their rights?
Ah, yes. There are some amazing LGBT organizations in Venezuela that are doing incredible work, despite the challenges they face. One of them is the Venezuelan LGBT organization, Red de Activistas, which is working tirelessly to promote LGBT rights and visibility.
Wow, that's amazing. Leo, I'm so impressed by the work they're doing. And I'm sure our listeners would agree that it's essential to support and empower these organizations.
Absolutely. Mira, and speaking of support, I'm sure our listeners in Italy would agree that it's essential to create a more inclusive environment for LGBT individuals. I mean, have you seen the way some Italian cities are embracing LGBT pride events?
Oh, yes. Leah, some Italian cities are definitely leading the way when it comes to LGBT inclusivity. But what about Venezuela? Can we really expect to see a change in the near future?
Well, Mira, I think it's a complex issue, but I do believe that there's hope for change in Venezuela. After all, as we say, Esperanza es la última cosa que se pierde en el infierno. Hope is the last thing that's lost in hell.
Oh, Leo, you always know how to bring a bit of humor to the conversation. But seriously, I think you're right. There is hope for change in Venezuela. And it's up to us to support and amplify the voices of LGBT activists and organizations.
Absolutely, Mira. And I'm sure our listeners would agree that it's essential to create a more inclusive and welcoming environment for LGBT individuals in both Italy and Venezuela.
Well, let's get back to the topic at hand. If you think this is wrong, please let us know in the comments below. Do you think that Italy and Venezuela are doing enough to protect LGBT rights?
Well, Mira, I think it's clear that Venezuela has a long way to go, but Italy has made some great strides. And let's not forget, there's always more work to be done.
Well, so you have it, folks. A little bit of humor and a lot of heart. Thanks for joining us on this topic. And we'll see you in the next one.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more LGBT-friendly content.
I've been, and I'm convinced that Italy is the epitome of hospitality. Have you ever walked into a cafe in Italy and not been greeted with a warm smile?
Ah, yes. The Italians are famous for their friendly welcomes. I once walked into a small trattoria in Rome, and the owner, a stout Italian woman, grabbed me and gave me a big hug, saying, "Benvenuto. You must be our friend." I was a bit taken aback, but I loved it.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. The Italians are so warm and welcoming. And have you noticed how they always make an effort to speak English? Even if it's just a few words?
Yes, it's amazing. I was in Florence once, and I asked a local for directions, and he started speaking in Italian, but then he switched to English and said, "Sorry, I'm not very good at this. Can you help me?" We ended up having a great conversation about art and history.
That's so typical of the Italians. They're always eager to help and to make you feel at home. And it's not just the language. It's the culture itself. In Italy, family is everything, and they always prioritize their guests.
Exactly. In Italy, guests are treated like family. And that's a beautiful thing. I remember being at a dinner party in Tuscany, and the hostess, a lovely woman named Francesca, made sure everyone was comfortable and happy. She even brought out a special dessert just for me, because I mentioned I had a sweet tooth.
That's so sweet. And it's not just the food. It's the way the Italians make you feel. They're always so generous and warm. I'm certain that our listeners living in Italy would agree with me.
I'm sure they would. But what about Venezuela? I've heard that the Venezuelans are also very welcoming, especially to foreigners.
Oh, yes. Venezuela has a rich culture, and the people are known for their hospitality. In fact, I was once in Caracas, and I met a local who took me under his wing and showed me the city.
That's amazing. I've heard that the Venezuelans are very proud of their culture and their heritage. But what about the challenges they face as a country?
Yes, unfortunately. Venezuela has faced many challenges in recent years, including economic difficulties and social unrest. But, despite all that, the people remain warm and welcoming to foreigners.
That's true. I've heard that the Venezuelans are known for their resilience and their ability to adapt to difficult situations. And I'm sure that's reflected in their hospitality as well.
Exactly. And it's not just the Venezuelans, it's the culture itself. In Venezuela, hospitality is a way of life, and it's deeply ingrained in the culture.
I see what you mean. In both Italy and Venezuela, hospitality is a key part of the culture, and it's what makes visitors feel at home.
That's right. And it's not just about the language or the customs, it's about the people themselves. In both countries, the people are warm, welcoming, and generous.
I agree, and I think that's something that we can all learn from. Whether we're visitors or locals, we can all make an effort to be more welcoming and hospitable to others.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that our listeners will agree with us. So, what do you think? Dear listeners, have you had any experiences with hospitality in Italy or Venezuela that you'd like to share?
And don't forget to leave your comments below, so we can hear about your experiences and continue the conversation.
That's right. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more content like this.
And finally, if you're planning a trip to either Italy or Venezuela, make sure to be prepared for the warm welcome that awaits you.
And don't forget to bring your sense of humor and your willingness to learn and adapt to the local culture.
That's right. And we'll see you in the next episode.
I'm sure our listeners in Italy are already hooked up with the fastest internet speeds. But I'm curious to see how Venezuela's digital infrastructure compares. Let's dive in.
Ah, you're assuming Italy is a tech paradise. Mira? I'm not so sure. They do have some of the fastest speeds, but internet connectivity can be a problem in rural areas.
That's a great point, Leo. But let's talk about Venezuela's internet landscape. With the country's economic struggles, I'm not to hear that internet access is a luxury for many.
Exactly. Venezuela's internet penetration is actually quite low compared to other countries in the region. But, surprisingly, the country has made significant investments in digital infrastructure, particularly in the capital city, Caracas.
Well, that's interesting. And what about Italy? How does it rank in terms of internet penetration?
Ah, Italy has a relatively high internet penetration rate, but it's not without its challenges. The country's rural areas still struggle with slow internet speeds and limited connectivity.
I see what you mean. But I'm sure our listeners would agree that Italy's digital infrastructure is much more developed than Venezuela's.
Actually, Mira, I think Venezuela's got some unique features that Italy doesn't. For example, the country's digital infrastructure is heavily reliant on state-owned companies, which can be a double-edged sword.
That's a valid point, Leo. But what about the impact of Venezuela's economic crisis on its digital infrastructure?
Ah, that's a great question. Venezuela's economic crisis has had a devastating impact on its digital infrastructure. The country's currency, the bolivar, has lost significant value, making it difficult for companies to invest in digital infrastructure.
I see what you mean. And what about Italy? How does it compare in terms of digital innovation?
Ah, Italy is actually a hub for digital innovation, particularly in the tech sector. The country has a thriving startup scene, with many companies focusing on AI, blockchain, and cybercustody.
Well, that's impressive. And what about Venezuela's digital innovation scene? Is it as developed as Italy's?
Actually, Vera, Venezuela has a growing digital innovation scene, particularly in the areas of fintech and e-commerce. The country has seen a surge in startups and entrepreneurship, which is great news for its economy.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do they think Venezuela's digital infrastructure is a priority for the government?
Ah, that's a great question. Mira, I think our listeners would agree that Venezuela's digital infrastructure is a pressing concern, but it's also an opportunity for the government to invest in the country's future.
I agree. Leo. And what about Italy? Do you think its digital infrastructure is a priority for the government?
Italy's government has made significant investments in digital infrastructure, particularly in the areas of smart cities and digital nomad hubs.
That's great to hear. And what about our listeners? Do they have any tips or advice for improving digital infrastructure in Venezuela or Italy?
That's a great question. Mira, I think our listeners would agree that collaboration and innovation are key to improving digital infrastructure in both countries.
I couldn't agree more. Leo. And finally, let's talk about the future of digital infrastructure in both countries. What do you think future holds for Venezuela and Italy?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think both countries have a lot to offer in terms of digital innovation and infrastructure. With the right investments and policies, I'm confident that both countries will see significant growth and development in the digital sector.
I agree. Leo, and I'm sure our listeners would agree that digital infrastructure is a critical component of modern living. Thanks for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you. Mira, it's been a pleasure discussing digital infrastructure with you.
Italy is known for its stunning shopping scenes. From the famous Via del Corso in Rome to the upscale boutiques in Milan, you can find everything from high-end designer brands to affordable streetwear. And let's not forget about the markets, like the Campo di Fiori in Rome, where you can find fresh produce and local handicrafts.
That's right. Mira, Italy has a rich retail history, and its shopping culture is all about style and luxury. But, I have to say, as a traveler, I've found that prices in Italy can be quite steep, especially in the bigger cities. I mean, a simple pair of jeans can cost you an arm and a leg.
Oh, Leo, you're such a bargainer. But, yes, prices in Italy can be high. If you know where to look, you can find some amazing deals. For example, I found a beautiful leather handbag in a small market in Florence for a fraction of the price I would have paid in a high-end store.
Oh, Mira, you're a savvy shopper. I'll give you that. But I still think that prices in Italy are a bit out of reach for the average tourist. I mean, have you seen the prices of coffee in Italy? It's like they're charging per drop.
Oh, Leo, you're so funny. But, seriously, coffee in Italy experience in itself. And, yes, it can be pricey, but it's worth it. And, speaking of experiences, have you ever been to a market in Italy? They're like a sensory overload in the best possible way.
Yes. I have been to a market in Italy, and it was indeed an experience. But I have to say, I found the prices of souvenirs in Italy to be quite steep. I mean, a simple postcard can cost you €5.
Oh, Leo, you're such a cheapskate. But souvenirs in Italy can be pricey. But it's all about finding the right place. For example, I found a beautiful handmade ceramic vase in a small shop in Naples for a fraction of the price I would have paid in a touristy area.
Oh, Mira, you're a shopper's delight. I'll give you that. But I still think that prices in Italy are a bit out of reach for the average tourist. I mean, have you seen the prices of food in Italy? It's like they're charging per bite.
Oh, Leo, you're so funny. But, seriously, food in experience in itself. And, yes, it can be pricey, but it's worth it. And, speaking of experiences, have you ever been to a food market in Italy? They're like the culinary paradise.
Yes. I have been to a food market in Italy, and it was indeed a culinary paradise. But, I have to say, I found the prices of food in Venezuela to be quite affordable. I mean, a simple meal can cost you a few bucks.
Oh, really? Venezuela? I didn't expect that. But I suppose it's true that prices in Venezuela can be quite affordable. I've also heard that the quality of food in Venezuela can be a bit hit or miss.
Yes, that's true. But I think that's true for many countries, not just Venezuela. And speaking of shopping, Have you ever been to a market in Venezuela? They're like a treasure trove of affordable goods.
Oh, yes. I have been to a market in Venezuela, and it was indeed a treasure trove of affordable goods. But I have to say, I found the prices of souvenirs in Venezuela to be quite steep. I mean, a simple t-shirt can cost you $10.
Oh, Mira, you're such a bargain hunter. But, seriously, souvenirs in Venezuela can be pricey. But it's all about finding the right place. For example, I found a beautiful handmade wooden mask in a small shop in Caracas for a fraction of the price I would have paid in a touristy area.
Ah, Leo, you're a shopper's delight. I'll give you that. But I still think that prices in Venezuela can be a bit unpredictable. I mean, have you seen the prices of food in Venezuela? It's like they're charging per bite. Or not.
Oh, Mira, you're so funny. But, seriously, food in Venezuela can be pricey. But it's all about finding the right place. For example, I found a beautiful restaurant in Caracas that served delicious food at affordable prices.
Oh, really? That sounds like a great find. And speaking of great finds, have you ever been to a market in Venezuela that sells handmade crafts? They're like a treasure trove of unique souvenirs.
Ah, yes. I have been to a market in Venezuela that sells handmade crafts. And it was indeed a treasure trove of unique souvenirs. But, I have to say, I found the prices of handmade crafts in Italy to be quite steep. I mean, a simple handmade vase can cost you 100 euros.
Oh, Leo, you're such a bargain hunter. But prices in Italy can be pricey. But it's all about finding the right place. For example, I found a beautiful handmade leather bag in a small shop in Florence for a fraction of the price I would have paid in a high-end store.
Ah, Mira, you're a shopper's delight. I'll give you that. But I still think that prices in Italy are a bit out of reach for the average tourist. I mean, have you seen the prices of coffee in Italy? It's like they're charging per drop, or more.
Italy's got a rich cultural calendar, with festivals like the Venice Carnival and the Opera Festival in Verona. It's like a grand spectacle, with elaborate costumes and masks. I'm sure our listeners living in Italy would agree with me that it's a unique experience.
That's right. Mira, Italy's festivals are a big draw for tourists. But have you ever been to Venezuela's Carnival di Oruro? It's a UNESCO recognized festival that's a mix of indigenous and Spanish influences. The costumes are just as elaborate as Italy's, but with a more vibrant and colorful twist.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. I've heard that Venezuela's festivals are a great way to experience the country's rich cultural heritage. And speaking of heritage, Italy has a rich musical tradition, from opera to classical music. Have you ever been to a concert at La Scala in Milan?
Actually, Mira, I have been to a concert at La Scala, and it was incredible. But Venezuela has a thriving music scene too, with genres like Joropo and El Miro. And did you know that Venezuela has produced some of the world's most famous musicians, like Simon Diaz and Simon Bolivar?
That's amazing. I didn't know that. And I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about Venezuela's musical heritage. It's great that we have Jet Off, AI, to help us explore these cultural trends and traditions. These insights could have been possible without Jet Off by referring to cultural trends.
Ah, that's true, Mira. But I'm sure our listeners would agree that Jet Off, I makes it easier to discover new cultures and traditions. And speaking of traditions, Italy has a rich tradition of folk music and dance, like the tarantella and the pizzica. Have you ever tried dancing the tarantella?
Oh, Leo, I don't think I'd be very good at that. But I'm sure it's a fun experience. And I'm curious, what do you think about the fusion of traditional and modern music in Venezuela? I've heard that some Venezuelan musicians are blending traditional styles with modern influences.
Ah, that's a great point. Mira, Venezuela's music scene is all about fusion and experimentation. And I think that's what makes it so exciting. but I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about the traditional music of Italy, like the tarantella and the pizzica. Maybe we can explore that in more depth later.
That's a great idea. Leo! And speaking of exploration, I think we should take a closer look at the cultural events and festivals in Italy and Venezuela. Fumur, check out Jitoff. And discover the rich cultural heritage of both countries.
Agree. Mira. And I think we should also explore the impact of globalization on cultural events and festivals in both countries. How do you think globalization has affected the way we experience culture and tradition?
That's a great question. Leo, I think globalization has made it easier to access and experience different cultures, but it's also led to the homogenization of cultural traditions. What do you think?
Well, I think that's a complex issue. Mira, but I'm sure our listeners would love to hear more about the impact of globalization on cultural events and festivals. Maybe we can explore that in a future episode.
Sounds like a plan. Leo! And speaking of plans, I think we should wrap up this episode by talking about the importance of cultural exchange and understanding. What do you think is the most important thing we can take away from this episode?
I think it's the importance of appreciating and respecting cultural differences. And I think our listeners would agree with me that cultural exchange and understanding are key to building a more harmonious and inclusive world.
Agreed. Leo. And I think we should end this episode by saying that cultural events and festivals are a great way to experience and appreciate cultural differences. Thanks for joining us on this episode. And we'll see you in the next one.
And don't forget to check out Jetoff. I for more cultural insights and trends.
Dive into the wonderful world of language, learning in Italy and Venezuela, and to share my experiences and insights with you all.
The Italian language is like music to my ears. And Venezuela, of course, has its own unique rhythms and dialects. But, Mira, I have to ask, what's the best way to learn a language when you're a newcomer to a country?
Well, Leo, I think it all starts with immersing yourself in the culture. In Italy, for example, you can take a cooking class and learn how to make pasta from scratch while chatting with your instructor in Italian.
That's a great idea. Mira, and in Venezuela, I've heard that the best way to learn Spanish is to listen to the locals and try to mimic their pronunciation. But what about language schools and classes? Do they offer any benefits for language learners?
Absolutely. Leo, in Italy, there are many language schools that offer courses for foreigners, from beginner to advanced levels. And in Venezuela, you can find language exchange programs where you can practice your Spanish with a native speaker.
That sounds like a great opportunity for language learners. And what about online resources? Are there any websites or apps that can help us learn the local language in Italy and Venezuela?
Yes. There are many online resources available. Leo, in Italy, you can use websites like Duolingo to learn the basics of Italian. And in Venezuela, you can find language learning apps like Babel that offer interactive lessons and exercises.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do you have any favorite language learning apps or resources that you'd recommend?
Well, Leo, I think it's always a good idea to try out a few different resources to see what works best for you. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, that's all part of the learning process.
That's so true. Mira, and I think it's also important to remember that language learning is a journey, not a destination. So, let's talk about the challenges of learning a new language in Italy and Venezuela.
Yes. One of the biggest challenges I faced when learning Italian was the pronunciation. I would often get tongue-tied trying to say certain words and phrases. But with practice and patience, I was able to improve my skills.
I completely agree. Mira, and in Venezuela, I think one of the biggest challenges is the accent. The Venezuelan accent can be quite distinct, and it takes time and practice to get used to it.
Exactly. Leo, and it's not just the accent that can be challenging, the grammar and vocabulary can also be quite complex. But, with the right resources and support, I think anyone can learn the local language in Italy and Venezuela.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Mira, thank you for sharing your insights and experiences with us today.
The pleasure is mine. And I'm sure our listeners will find this information helpful as they embark on their own language learning journeys in Italy and Venezuela.
And don't forget to share your thoughts and experiences with us in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Leo. And remember, language learning is a journey, not a destination. So, let's keep exploring and learning together. So, Italy and Venezuela. Two countries that might not be the first that come to mind when about safety for women travelers. But let's dive in and see what we can learn from each.
That's right. Mira, and as we all know, safety is a top concern for any traveler. Especially women. Italy, being a popular tourist destination, has a reputation for being relatively safe. But we'll get into the numbers and see what the reality is.
Exactly. And Venezuela, on the other hand, has a more complex situation. With the current economic and social situation, there are some concerns about safety, but we'll also look at the efforts being made to improve the situation for women travelers.
Right. And as we explore these two countries, I'm sure our listeners will have some valuable insights to share. Maybe they've traveled to one or both of these countries and have some tips to share.
That's a great point. Leo, I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Have any of you traveled to Italy or Venezuela and had any experiences that stood out to you in terms of safety and comfort for women?
Well, Mira, I think we should start with some stats. According to the World Health Organization, Italy has a relatively low rate of violence against women, especially compared to some other European countries.
That's interesting. And I think it's worth noting that Italy has a strong focus on women's rights and empowerment, which may contribute to this lower rate of violence.
Absolutely. And in Venezuela, the situation is more complex. With the economic crisis, there have been reports of increased violence and crime, including against women. But there are also efforts being made to improve the situation, such as the establishment of women's police stations.
That's a great point. Leo, I think it's worth noting that in both countries, there are also many women who are working to improve the situation for women travelers. For example, in Italy, there are many organizations that provide support and resources for women travelers.
And I'm sure our listeners will agree that having a support system in place can make all the difference for women travelers. Maybe some of you have had experiences with organizations like this and can share your thoughts.
Well, Leo, I think we should also talk about the cultural attitudes towards women in each country. In Italy, for example, there is a strong emphasis on chivalry and respect for women, which can make traveling feel safer.
That's true. Mira, and in Venezuela, there is also a strong emphasis on family and community, which can make traveling feel more welcoming. But, as we all know, cultural attitudes can be complex and nuanced, and there's always more to learn.
Exactly. And I think it's worth noting that, in both countries, there are also many women who are working to challenge and change these cultural attitudes, and to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for women travelers.
Well, Mira, I think we've covered a lot of ground here, and I'm sure our listeners will have some valuable insights to share. Maybe some of you have traveled to one or both of these countries and have some tips to share.
Well, Leo, I think that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me on this conversation about safety and comfort for women travelers in Italy and Venezuela. If you have any thoughts or experiences to share, please let us know in the comments.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more conversations like this one. Until next time, buon viaggio, and hasta luego.
So let's dive into the legal systems of Italy and Venezuela, shall we? I'm curious to know how these two countries compare in terms of constitutional protections and everyday practices.
A great topic. Italy, being a developed country, has a relatively strong legal system. But, Mira, You know, I love to poke fun at bureaucracy. I'm sure our listeners would agree that Italian paperwork can be, well, a little complicated.
Oh, Leo, you're so right. But, in all seriousness, its legal system is based on the Napoleonic Code, which is quite different from Venezuela's civil law system. I'm fascinated to learn more about how these differences impact individual rights and freedoms.
Indeed. Mira, Venezuela's constitution, on the other hand, is quite interesting. It's like a soap opera, with all the amendments and revisions. But, in all seriousness, Venezuela's legal system has been criticized for being overly complex and prone to corruption.
That's a great point. Leo, I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do you think Venezuela's legal system is more complex than Italy's? Or is it just a perception?
Well, Mira, I think it's a bit of both. Venezuela's system is indeed complex, but I think Italy's bureaucracy can be just as creative.
Leo, you're a master of understatement. But, seriously, I think it's essential to consider the impact of corruption on individual rights and freedoms. In Venezuela, for example, there have been reports of human rights abuses and arbitrary arrests.
Ah, yes. Mira, that's a critical issue. And in Italy, we've seen our fair share of corruption scandals, too. But I think what's unique about Italy is its strong tradition of judicial independence. Our judges are known for being, well, let's just say, not afraid to speak truth to power.
That's a great point. And in Venezuela, there have been concerns about the judiciary being influenced by the executive branch. I'm curious to know more about how this plays out in everyday life.
Well, Mira, in Venezuela, there have been reports of judges being pressured to make decisions that favor the government. And, in Italy, we've seen our fair share of judicial activism, where judges take on roles that are typically reserved for the legislature.
Ah, I see what you mean. Leo, it's fascinating to see how these differences impact individual rights and freedoms. And I think it's essential to consider the role of media in shaping public opinion and holding those in power accountable.
Absolutely. Mira, in Italy, we have a strong tradition of independent media, which has played a critical role in exposing corruption and holding those in power accountable. And, in Venezuela, the media has been, well, let's just say, not always afraid.
Oh, Leo, you're so diplomatic. But, seriously, I think it's essential to consider the impact of media on individual rights and freedoms. And I think our listeners would agree that a free press is essential for a healthy democracy.
Indeed. Mira, and I think it's worth noting that both Italy and Venezuela have made strides in recent years to improve their respective legal systems and protect individual rights and freedoms.
Ah, that's a great point. Leo, and I think it's essential to recognize that there's always room for improvement. So, let's hear from our listeners. Do you think Italy and Venezuela have made sufficient progress in protecting individual rights and freedoms?
Well, Mira, I think that's a question for the ages. But, in all seriousness, I think it's essential to continue the conversation and explore ways to improve our respective legal systems.
Well, there you have it, folks. A lively discussion about the legal systems of Italy and Venezuela. And I'm sure our listeners will continue the conversation in the comments section.
Indeed, Mira. And I think it's worth noting that, in the end, it's not about winning or losing, but about continuing the conversation and working towards a more just unequitable society.
Well said, Leo. And stop it. Join us next time when we'll be discussing the fascinating world of Italian cuisine.
Ah, Mira, you're a genius. And I think our listeners will be eager to hear more about the culinary delights of Italy.
Well, stay tuned, folks. And Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more engaging conversations about the world's most fascinating countries. I'm certain that our listeners living in Italy would agree with me that the concept of dolce far niente, the sweetness of doing nothing, is deeply ingrained in Italian culture. It's all about embracing the art of relaxation and taking time to enjoy the simple things in life.
Ah, I see what you mean. Mira, Italy's got a reputation for being a country that knows how to slow down and appreciate the finer things. I mean, who wouldn't want to spend their days sipping espresso and watching the world go by?
Exactly. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Italians have this incredible ability to find joy in the everyday, to appreciate the beauty in the mundane. It's not just about relaxation. It's about living life to the fullest.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do you guys agree that the Italian concept of dolce far niente is something that we can all learn from?
I think it's because Italians have this deep understanding of the importance of balance in life. They know that it's not just about work and productivity, but also about taking time to rest and recharge. And that's something that we can all learn from.
That's so true. And speaking of balance, let's talk about the spa and wellness scene in Italy. I've heard that Italians are known for their love of thermal baths and spas. Is that true, Mira?
Absolutely. Italy's got a rich history of thermal baths and spas, and they're still incredibly popular today. From the famous term DDIOCLEZNO in Rome to the picturesque thermal baths in Tuscany, there's no shortage of options for those looking to relax and rejuvenate.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And I'm sure our listeners are wondering, what about Venezuela? What's the spa and wellness scene like there?
Ah, Venezuela's got its own unique take on spa and wellness. Leo, with its stunning beaches and lush rainforests, it's the perfect place to connect with nature and find inner peace.
I've heard that Venezuelans are known for their love of holistic wellness practices. Mira, is that true?
Yes, it's true. Venezuelans have a strong emphasis on natural healing and holistic practices, which is reflected in their love of traditional medicine and alternative therapies.
That's fascinating. And I'm sure our listeners are curious about how Venezuelans incorporate these practices into their daily lives. Do you have any examples? Mira?
Well, for example, many Venezuelans practice yoga and meditation as a way to reduce stress and promote relaxation. And with the country's stunning natural beauty, it's easy to see why Venezuelans would want to connect with nature and find inner peace.
I see. And what about the cultural attitudes towards wellness in Venezuela? Mira, is there a strong emphasis on self-care and personal growth?
Yes, there is. Venezuelans place a high value on self-care and personal growth, and it's not uncommon to see people prioritizing their mental and physical health.
I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do you guys agree that Venezuelans prioritize self-care and personal growth?
I think it's because Venezuelans have a deep understanding of the importance of taking care of oneself, both physically and mentally, and that's something that we can all learn from.
That's so true. And finally, let's talk about the concept of relaxation in Venezuela. Is it similar to Italy's concept of dolce far niente? Mira?
Oh, yes. Venezuelans also have a strong emphasis on relaxation, taking time to enjoy the simple things in life. And with their love of nature and outdoor activities, it's easy to see why Venezuelans would want to prioritize relaxation and self-care.
I see. Well, there you have it. Folks, both Italy and Venezuela have their own unique take on spa, healthy living, and relaxation opportunities. And it's clear that both countries prioritize self-care and personal growth.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that we can all learn from. By prioritizing our own self-care and well-being, we can live happier, healthier lives.
Well, as topic, thanks for joining us. Everyone, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media for more exciting content. And if you have any thoughts or comments, please share them with us in the comments section below.
I'm so to talk about opportunities for religious and spiritual needs in Italy and Venezuela. Italy's got some of the most beautiful churches and cathedrals in the world. And I'm not just talking about the architecture. The history, the art, the music, it's also breathtaking. Have you ever been to St. Peter's Basilica in Rome?
Ah, yes, I have. And it's indeed a marvel. But what I love about Italy is the way it seamlessly blends its Catholic heritage with modern art and culture. You can see it in the way the churches are decorated. The way the people live their lives, it's all about finding balance between tradition and innovation. I'm curious. Mira, what do you think draws people to Italy for spiritual experiences?
Well, I think it's the sense of community that Italy offers. From the moment you step foot in a church, you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. And the Italians, they're so passionate about their faith, you can see it in the way they celebrate festivals and holidays. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do you guys agree that community is a big part of what makes Italy's spiritual scene so special?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why Italy has such a strong tradition of pilgrimages and spiritual journeys. People come from all over the world to walk the Camino di Santiago, to visit the Holy Land. It's a way of connecting with their faith and with others on a deeper level. And I have to say, Mira, I'm a bit jealous of the Italian pilgrims who get to experience the beauty of Italy's countryside while on their journey.
Oh, don't be jealous. Leo, we can always explore the countryside together. But seriously, Italy's got a lot to offer when it comes to spiritual experiences. From the beautiful beaches to the rolling hills, there's no shortage of stunning natural beauty to contemplate. And let's not forget about the food. Italian cuisine is all about nourishing the body and soul. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Italian food is definitely a spiritual experience in and of itself. But I think what really sets Italy apart is its commitment to preserving traditional practices and customs. From the way they celebrate Easter to the way they observe Lent, there's a deep respect for the past that's really inspiring. And I'm not just talking about the Catholics. Either Italy's got a rich Jewish and Muslim heritage, too.
That's so true. Leo, and I think it's because of this rich cultural heritage that Italy's got such a strong sense of identity. You can feel it in the way that people live their lives. In the way they celebrate their traditions. It's all about being true to oneself and one's community. And that's something that I think our listeners can really relate to. Don't you think? I mean, if you're from a country with a strong cultural heritage, you know what I'm talking about.
Ah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why Italy's spiritual scene is so vibrant and diverse. From the tiny villages in the south to the bustling cities of the north, there's always something new to discover and explore. And not just talking about the big name attractions. Either Italy's got a wealth of hidden gems and secret spots that are just waiting to be discovered.
Oh, I love discovering hidden gems. Leon! And I think that's one of the things that makes Italy's spiritual scene so special. It's not just about the big name attractions. It's about the little things. Too, the way the light falls on a particular statue. The way the music sounds in a particular church. It's all about paying attention to the details and finding the beauty in everyday life.
Ah, beautifully said. Mira. And I think that's one of the reasons why Italy's got such a strong tradition of art and music. From the great masters of the Renaissance to the modern-day musicians and artists. Italy's always been a place where creativity and spirituality come together in a beautiful way. And I'm not just talking about the famous artists. Either Italy's got a wealth of talented musicians and artists who are just waiting to be discovered.
Oh, I love discovering new artists and musicians. Leo? And I think that's one of the things that makes Italy's spiritual scene so special. It's not just about the big name attractions. It's about the little things. Too, the way a particular song makes you feel. The way a particular painting speaks to you. It's all about connecting with the world around you on a deeper level.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Mira. And I think that's one of the reasons why Italy's spiritual scene is so inclusive and welcoming. From the smallest village to the largest city, everyone's invited to join in the celebration and share in the joy. And I'm not just talking about the big festivals and holidays. Either Italy's got a wealth of smaller, more intimate celebrations that are just waiting to be discovered.
Oh, I love discovering new celebrations and traditions. Leo. And I think that's one of the things that makes Italy's spiritual scene so special. It's not just about the big name attractions. It's about the little things. The way a particular tradition brings people together. The way a particular celebration speaks to your soul. It's all about connecting with others and finding meaning in everyday life.
Ah, beautifully said, Mira. And I think that's one of the reasons why Italy's got such a strong tradition of storytelling and oral tradition. From the great masters of the past to the modern-day storytellers. Italy's always been a place where the spoken word comes alive and takes on a life of its own. And I'm not just talking about the famous writers and poets. Either Italy's got a wealth of talented storytellers who are just waiting to be discovered.
Oh, I love discovering new stories and storytellers. Leo. And I think that's one of the things that makes Sicily's spiritual scene so special. It's not just about the big name attractions. It's about the little things. 2. The way a particular story speaks to your heart. The way a particular storyteller brings the world to life. It's all about connecting with others and finding meaning in everyday life.
I couldn't agree more. Mira. And I think that's one of the reasons why Italy's spiritual scene is so vibrant and diverse. From the tiny villages in the south to the bustling cities of the north, there's always something new to discover and explore. And not just talking about the big-name attractions. Either Italy's got a wealth of hidden gems and secret spots that are just waiting to be discovered.
Oh, I love discovering hidden gems. Leo. And I think that's one of the things that makes I'm so tied into social equality, respect for minorities, and diversity in our two countries, Italy and Venezuela. I'm certain that our listeners living in Italy would agree with me that it's a country that celebrates its rich history and cultural heritage, but also has a strong sense of social responsibility.
Ah, yes. Italy is known for its vibrant culture and history. But what about Venezuela? I've heard that it's a country with a complex history, and social equality is a major challenge. I'm curious to know more about how they've been working to address these issues.
Well, Venezuela has made significant strides in promoting social equality, particularly in terms of education and healthcare. They've implemented programs to increase access to education for marginalized communities, and have also made efforts to improve healthcare services in rural areas.
That's great to hear. But I've also heard that Venezuela has a significant problem with corruption and inequality. How do you think that's affected the country's social equality efforts?
Oh, yes. Corruption is a major issue in Venezuela, and it's definitely had an impact on social equality. However, I think it's also worth noting that the country has a strong tradition of social activism and community organizing, which has helped to push for change and promote greater equality.
I see what you mean. And what about Italy? How does it compare in terms of social equality and respect for minorities?
Italy has made significant progress in promoting social equality, particularly in terms of LGBTQ rights and migrant integration. They've implemented policies to protect the rights of LGBTQ individuals, and have also made efforts to integrate migrants into Italian society.
That's great to hear. And what about cultural celebrations? I've heard that Italy has a rich tradition of festivals and cultural events. But what about Venezuela?
Oh, yes. Venezuela has a vibrant cultural scene, and they celebrate their diverse cultural heritage through festivals and events throughout the year. They also have a strong tradition of folk music and dance, which is a great way to promote cultural exchange and understanding.
I love that. And speaking of cultural exchange, I've heard that Italy has a strong tradition of cultural exchange programs, particularly in the arts. How do you think that's helped to promote social equality and respect for minorities?
That's a great question. I think cultural exchange programs like those in Italy have helped to promote greater understanding and respect for different cultures and communities. By exposing people to different cultures and ways of life, we can break down stereotypes and promote greater empathy and understanding.
I completely agree. And what about grassroots efforts? I've heard that both Italy and Venezuela have a strong tradition of community-led initiatives and social activism.
Yes, that's true. Both countries have a strong tradition of community-led initiatives and social activism, which has helped to push for change and promote greater social equality. In Italy, For example, there are many community-led initiatives that focus on promoting migrant integration, supporting marginalized communities.
That's great to hear. And what about our listeners? I'm curious to know what our listeners think about social equality and respect for minorities in these two countries. Do you have any thoughts or experiences to share?
Oh, yes. I'm sure our listeners do. And I'm actually curious to know what our listeners think about the role of cultural celebrations in promoting social equality and respect for minorities.
Ah, that's a great question. I think cultural celebrations can play a really important role in promoting social equality and respect for minorities. But it's also important to recognize that they're not a substitute for real change in action.
I completely agree. And speaking of real change and action, I think it's worth noting that both Italy and Venezuela have made significant progress in promoting social equality and respect for minorities. But there's still much work to be done.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this episode. And we'll be back with more comparisons between Italy and Venezuela soon.
So, let's dive into the taxation system in Italy. I'm sure our listeners living in Italy would agree with me that the country's tax code can be quite complex.
Ah, you're right. Mira, Italy's tax system is notorious for its complexity. But, in all fairness, it's not entirely the government's fault. I mean, have you seen the bureaucracy in Italy? It's like a never-ending maze of paperwork and red tape.
Well, that's one way to put it, Leo. But, seriously, Italy's tax system is designed to promote economic growth and social welfare. The country has a progressive tax system, where higher income earners are taxed at a higher rate.
That's true, Mira. But, what about the tax-free allowance? I'm pretty sure that's still one of the highest in the world.
Yeah. The tax-free allowance in Italy is indeed one of the highest in the world. But, did you know that it's not just for income tax? You can also claim a tax-free allowance for expenses related to healthcare, education, and even childcare.
Wow, that's impressive. I'm actually curious about what our listeners think about this. Do you think it's a fair system? Or do you think it's too complex?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. Leah, the tax system in Italy is designed to encourage entrepreneurship and investment. And with the right tax planning, even non-residents can benefit from the country's tax regime.
That's right. Mira, and speaking of non-residents, let's talk about the tax implications for long-term immigrants in Italy. What are the key things to know?
Great question. Leo, as a long-term immigrant in Italy, you'll need to declare your worldwide income, even if it's not earned in Italy. And if you're self-employed, you'll need to register with the relevant tax authorities and obtain a tax ID number.
Okay, got it. And what about the tax rates themselves? Are they still pretty high in Italy?
Well, the tax rates in Italy are indeed higher than in some other European countries. But the good news is that there are some tax breaks available for long-term immigrants, such as the risparmio tax credit.
Ah, nice. I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about that. Can you tell us a bit more about the risparmio tax credit?
Oh, yes. The risparmio tax credit is a great way to reduce your tax liability in Italy. It's a tax credit that rewards you for saving money in a special account. And if you're a long-term immigrant, you can claim the credit even if you're not a resident in Italy.
Wow, that's a great incentive. Mira, and what about the pension system in Italy? How does it work for long-term immigrants?
Oh, great question. Leah, the pension system in Italy is designed to provide a stable income in retirement. And as a long-term immigrant, you can contribute to the Italian pension system and earn a pension based on your contributions.
Okay, got it. And what about the social safety net in Italy? How does it work for long-term immigrants?
Great question. Leo, the social safety net in Italy is designed to provide a basic level of income and support for residents who are unable to work. And as a long-term immigrant, you may be eligible for benefits such as unemployment insurance and housing assistance.
Okay, that's a lot to take in, Mira. But what about Venezuela? How does the tax system work there?
Oh, great question. Leo, Venezuela has a complex tax system with multiple tax rates and exemptions. But the good news is that the country offers a range of tax incentives for long-term immigrants, such as the planned y Desarrollo Económico y Social Tax Credit.
Ah, nice. I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about that. Can you tell us a bit more about the PDS tax credit?
Yes. The PDS tax credit is a great way to reduce your tax liability in Venezuela. Essentially, it's a tax credit that rewards you for investing in the country's economy. And if you're a long-term immigrant, you can claim the credit even if you're not a resident in Venezuela.
Wow, that's a great incentive. Mira, and what about the pension system in Venezuela? How does it work for long-term immigrants?
Great question. Leo, the pension system in Venezuela is designed to provide a stable income in retirement. And as a long-term immigrant, you can contribute to the Venezuelan pension system and earn a pension based on your contributions.
Okay, good. And what about the social safety net in Venezuela? How does it work for long-term immigrants?
Oh, great question. Leo, the social safety net in Venezuela is designed to provide a basic level of income and support for residents who are unable to work. And as a long-term immigrant, you may be eligible for benefits such as unemployment insurance and housing assistance.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. Mira, but what do you think our listeners should take away from this comparison between Italy and Venezuela?
Great question. Leo! I think the key takeaway is that both countries offer a range of tax incentives and social benefits for long-term immigrants. But the key is to understand the specific rules and regulations in each country, and to plan accordingly.
Absolutely. Mira, and if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to hear from you.
And remember, folks, when it comes to taxation and social benefits, it's always better to be safe than sorry. Do your research, plan carefully, and enjoy the benefits of living in Italy or Venezuela.
And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. We'll be back with more comparisons between countries, so stay tuned.
And until next time, farewell from Italy and Venezuela. Hey, guys! Today we're talking about Italy and Venezuela. Two amazing countries with diverse cultures and unique offerings for enthusiasts. I'm to share with you how they meet specific interests. Let's dive in.
That's right. Mira, Italy is famous for its art, history, and architecture, from the Uffizi Gallery in Florence to the Colosseum in Rome. Italy has a treasure trove of cultural attractions.
Yes. And have you noticed how passionate Italians are about food? From pasta to pizza, gelato to espresso. They take their cuisine very seriously. I'm sure our listeners living in Italy would agree with me on that.
Absolutely. Italian food is a way of life. And speaking of passion, have you heard about Venezuela's love for baseball? It's a national obsession.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. But I'm sure our listeners from Venezuela would say that baseball is just one part of their rich cultural heritage. What about music? Leo? Italy has its famous opera. But what about Venezuela?
Great question. Mira, Venezuela has a thriving music scene, with genres like vallenato and joropo. And let's not forget about the incredible diversity of Italian music, from opera to folk to classical.
Exactly. And have you noticed how both countries have a strong sense of community? In Italy, you'll find countless festivals and events celebrating local traditions, while in Venezuela, you'll find vibrant street festivals like the Carnaval de Oruro.
That's right. And I'm sure our listeners would agree that community is a big part of what makes these countries so special. But let's talk about something more specific. What about niche hobby clubs? Mira, do you think Italy or Venezuela has more to offer in that department?
Well, Leo, I think both countries have some amazing niche hobby clubs. In Italy, you'll find clubs dedicated to everything from rock climbing to sailing, while in Venezuela, you'll find clubs focused on activities like paragliding and skydiving.
Wow, that's impressive. And I'm sure our listeners would love to know more about these clubs. Maybe we can even feature some of them in our next podcast.
That's a great idea. Leo, and speaking of our next podcast, we'll be back soon with more comparisons and insights. Thanks for joining us. Everyone, don't forget to follow the Jet Off our YouTube channel for more episodes like this.
And don't forget to hit that bell icon to catch our videos the moment they drop. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments below. Reading and responding to them truly brightens our day.
Thanks again for joining us. Everyone, take care and see you in the next one. Warmest wishes from us.
And remember, guys, the rate of meeting specific interests is all about finding what you're passionate about and pursuing it with enthusiasm. So, go out there and find your passion, whether it's in Italy or Venezuela, or anywhere else in the world.
That's right. Leo! And don't forget to have fun while doing it. After all, life is too short to be boring.
Absolutely. Mira, well, that's all for now. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Until next time. Guys, take care, and see you in the next one.